Good evening and welcome to the Beverly Hills Unified School District Board of Education regular meeting. Today is July 26, 2022, and the time is 5:15. To start our meeting, I would like to, before we start the meeting, I'd like to start with a moment of silence, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Brady to lead that.
Thank you, President Wells. Please join me in a moment of silence as we mourn the loss of a former longtime BHUSD employee, Rhoda Sharp, and one of our current staff members, Calvin Riggle, who was the CSCA president and a 15-year employee of BHUSD. Let us reflect on their lives as parents and as service to the community and our school district. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brady. Now I'd like to ask Alex Bowden, our new student board member. I'd like to give her a huge welcome and woo! And I'd like to ask if you'd lead us in the flag salute. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mrs. Marcus, would you like to read the mission and vision statement? Does anyone have their agenda?
Sure.
Okay.
Want to just give her the agenda?
Yeah, it's right on the top.
Right above the.
Thank you.
Thank you. In a safe and supportive community, Beverly Hills Unified School District will deliver a rigorous and enriching quality education and prepare all students to thrive as productive citizens in a complex, changing world. All students will be inspired to act with integrity and realize their academic potential while achieving college and career readiness.
Thank you, Mrs. Marcus. May I have approval of the agenda, please?
So moved.
A second.
Motion was made by Mr. Margot, and seconded by Mrs. Marcus. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0 with a preferential vote from Alex Bowden. Next on the agenda, Dr. Brady, would you please report on closed session?
Yes, President Wells and Board of Education, the board has voted 5-0 to approve OAH case 2022-020922.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is the community spotlight, and today we are highlighting the American with Disabilities Act because today is July 26th, which is the anniversary of the signing of the American Disabilities Act from 1990. And this was such an important law that went into action and has helped so many people to live their lives enabled them to live their lives to their fullest. It was a ban on discrimination against millions of people and requires reasonable accommodations in schools, on transportation, and in other areas of public life. And I think it's also important to note that all of us at some point in our lives, should we be so lucky to live so long, will likely be stepping into this family of Americans with disabilities, and we should be very grateful that we have these accommodations that have been made so that we can all live our independent best lives. So today we're going to hear from a few people. We have a special guest here, Adele Little, who's a Beverly Hills resident, who's going to share with us this evening. And as well, we're going to hear from Alma Ordaz. She's a parent at BHUSD. And as well, we're going to hear from BHUSD parents, Greg and Amy Bell, if they're able to get onto Zoom today. And I'd also like to take a few minutes after that to highlight two individuals, a former teacher, Jill Kinmont, and as well the woman Judy Heumann, who's considered to be the mother of the disabilities rights movement, who I don't think we can talk about today without acknowledging her. So first, I would like to invite up Adele Little. should come out.
It is wired though, so let's see how far it'll go down. Can you do that? That'd be great. Is that good?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Adele Little, and I've been in a wheelchair 24/7 for about 18 years. And before I begin, I'd like to say that my sister sent to me a little pamphlet called Accessible Sidewalks and Street Crossings. And in it, it told a brief summary that the idea of arranging for handicapped, disabled people started like in the 50s. And the laws started coming out in the 60s. And I think one law came for education in 1973. And by 1990, ADA came out and covered everything from buildings and renovated buildings where you had to provide. And thank goodness, my disability came when I stopped working. I was about 63. And since then, I dig senior centers. And every senior center I go to, I can get in because of the ramps. So I'm very grateful. The cutout sidewalks are great. And I liked in this little pamphlet put out by the federal government, it's only 9 pages, but it covers a lot. It suggested that highways are made for different kinds of vehicles and sidewalks are made for different kinds of people. And it pointed out wheelchairs, but there are mothers with baby strollers, there are blind people with canes, and they have very specific instructions on how wide and a sidewalk should be, what materials. But the most graceful thing I'm grateful for are the cutout sidewalks, because I can't imagine the energy it would take to be doing curves all days. I think I'd stay home a lot. But as it is, I feel like I'm more active than when I had 2 legs. And I chose a wheelchair over a prosthetic leg because I'm peppy and I like to get around quickly. So, that's it. And I said, well, although I've been inconvenienced for a lot of years, it's just that things keep getting better and better for people who need to travel in a wheelchair. And I'm very grateful. And the federal government has done a great job. And I understand that from the pamphlet that states can make laws, and they're just as enforceable as the federal laws are. So hip, hip, hooray for the USA.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Adele. And if you wouldn't mind just sticking around a little bit till everybody speaks. And after that, we'll go around for board comments, which would be terrific. Next, we'd like to hear from our BHUSD parent, Alma Ordaz.
So good evening. It's been a while since I've been here. President Wells, Vice President Margot, and distinguished school board members. It is an honor to speak to you this evening on the anniversary of the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act, signed into law on July 26, 1990. We have now raised a generation of Americans who have benefited from the protections that the ADA offers. Passing ADA legislation was no easy feat. It began in 1973 with the Rehabilitation Act, and while that provided some protections, it was not enough to safeguard the civil rights protection that Americans with disabilities required. In 1990, as a young woman in my 20s, little could I guess the impacts that the ADA would play in my life. Since then, the ADA has affected me nearly in every aspect, including both professional and personal. My understanding of disabilities began when I was a 5-year-old. I vividly recall standing with my mother, waiting for the light to change, and out of the corner of my eye, I spied a man with a white cane who was tap, tap, tapping. And I stared. And catching my mother's attention, she asked me why I was staring. And I said, well, why does he have that cane? And why is he tapping with the cane? And my mother said that he was blind. And that while it was okay to look at him, it was not okay to stare at him. And most importantly, it was not okay to treat him differently. That if I was to do anything different, it was to treat him with kindness, and if needed, to help him, but only if and when it seemed that he required the assistance. And it is my mother's voice that has always stayed in my head. Let's see. And so that's when I first became, as I said, aware of disabilities. And in my professional life, I started working in healthcare in the mid-1980s. At that time, AIDS was a very frightening disease that was striking many of our young people. And there was a patient who had AIDS and who was having a hard time getting a medication approved. And I assisted him with that. And he came to me to bring me a gift, to thank me for the help that I had rendered. And as he came to thank me, he stuck his hand out. And I was afraid. I was afraid because this was still an unknown quantity. We didn't know much about the disease. And all I could hear was my mother's voice. And I stuck out my hand. And he gave me the world's biggest hug. And that changed my life. I learned to become an advocate for him and for patients like him when they were having services and medications denied by their insurance companies. And that in turn prepared me to becoming an advocate for my daughter. I adopted a child in 1995. Back in the day, we called them crack babies. Her biological mother was a polysubstance abuser. So we had been warned of the many developmental delays which we might encounter. Thankfully, we encountered none of those delays. Stephanie was an active, precocious child who hit every milestone on time or ahead of schedule. Made me think parenting was so simple that I did it again, and I adopted her sister 3 years later. However, when she was about 7 years old, Stephanie began experiencing symptoms which were very troubling and very confusing to us. She began with her first fracture. Over the period of 5 years, she probably had about 5 different fractures. We also discovered she had some tumors. All of this, by the way, is completely unrelated to the exposure that she had in utero. And we were told that, the joint instability and hypermobility that she was experiencing was because the tumors were adjacent to her growth plates. So we expected that when the growth plates closed, that, the problems would cease, but they didn't. And so we went through a series of diagnoses by elimination. It was Osgood-Schlatter syndrome. It was hypermobility syndrome disorder, until finally they came up with what it was, which is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is a little known and little understood genetic disorder that affects your collagen. So aside from keeping us wrinkle-free, collagen also serves to essentially keep our body in its place. It holds our bones, muscles, tendons, ligaments, hair, teeth where they belong. In people like Stephanie, her collagen is defective, so things don't stay in place. For some, it's a relatively benign condition. For others, it is life-shortening. Ehlers-Danlos is a debilitating, degenerative, disabling disease. And we are still, learning to deal with the consequences of that. Thankfully, we had ADA regulations to help us. Accommodations were made for Stephanie when needed. Because she was so often in a cast or crutches, she was provided with 2 sets of school books, one for home and one for the classroom. She had what some of us, especially those of us who went to Beverly, would have given anything to have, a permanent 4-year elevator pass, which she never used because she wanted to be like everyone else. We had amazing educators who did everything possible to make sure that she had every reasonable accommodation and that her academic experience at Beverly was both, fruitful and beneficial to her in every which way. Our heroes were women like, Molly Peterson, Carrie Benson, Joni Garrett, Michelle, we're blanking out on her last name, Michelle Michelson, I know I'm butchering the last name there. But the special education teachers were amazing. And I will forever be grateful to BHUSD and Beverly Hills High School for helping my daughter, have the experience that every child deserves in school. Stephanie was able to participate to the fullest of her abilities. And she was in orchestra, she lettered into sports. She was a senior Girl Scout, and she participated as a volunteer for the Explorers. But EDS, like many other invisible disabilities, is not easy to spot. Even to this day, when you look at Stephanie, you see a young woman who is fit, who is trim, who is athletic, who seems to be in the fullest of life with a body that is falling apart. And we need to, be aware of those who suffer in silence, because there are those disabilities that are invisible to the eye. Stephanie learned that while she had EDS did not have her. She would not be defined by the limits of her disability, but rather by the gifts of her abilities. And my glasses aren't helping me much, I'm sorry. And just as I once heard my mother's voice, which in turn led me to find my voice, my daughter has now learned to have a voice. And she now advocates for herself and for others. The ADA legislation has done much to protect the rights of disabled, but it is up to us to do more. Just as my mother taught me, we begin at home by planting the seeds of kindness. We rely on our schools, our teachers, to nurture that seed by making sure that every opportunity is given to our disabled students, and that students with emotional or intellectual disabilities are treated with dignity and with respect, and given the opportunity to reach their full potential. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alma. That was wonderful. It's really wonderful. I think it's so important to acknowledge the invisible disabilities, because we often don't think of that when we speak about people with disabilities. So thank you for talking about that. The next parents that we're going to hear from is, I think it's Greg Bell, and he's on our Zoom. So Greg, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can. Thank you.
Hey, all right, great. Thank you, Mary. Greetings, everyone. Hello, Dr. Brady. Nice to see you. Thank you for sending me over the invitation to speak today. I would just, the American, I haven't researched the ADA completely and understand what its basis and history was. I can just tell you that it's been obviously very important in my life. I have a 18-year-old daughter who's been through the whole school district system. Liza, many of you know her, and she is a disabled person under the law, and as a result, she's entitled to the services that she gets not only through the district, but outside of the district through the regional center. She suffers from a form of cerebral palsy called hypotonia. She also has some significant developmental delays. And so my assumption is that the ADA was the precursor to everything that allowed her to get the necessary services that she gets not only in the district, but outside of the district now. She's 18, she just graduated, And, you know, my story with her, I think it's important for the district to know, you know, what her experience was going through the school system. She's been participating, I think she started in 2nd or 3rd grade, I can't remember exactly. You know, the IEP process itself and the things associated with having to navigate the system are challenging when you have a disabled child, whether they're participating under the ADA or they're participating through the educational format. As a result of the ADA, you have to advocate for your children. And especially if they're disabled, then they need services because the process isn't easy for parents. And for those parents that are listening or watching, I would say if you have a disabled child and you're trying to figure out what you need to do, the best thing you need to do is advocate. You have as equal rights as the school district does when it comes to planning your child's needs and services within the school district system. It's a 50-50, and if you don't like it, you don't have to accept it. And we had our battles along the way. We had our differences in what was needed for Liza and the services that she was entitled to get under the district. And, you know, we were able to settle some of them and resolve some of others, and others we pushed for. And ultimately, you know, the team agreed with assessments and items that we felt were appropriate for her. And she had a wonderful experience, you know, throughout her time in the actual setting. And I would say the hardest thing and the biggest challenge for her was with the typical kids and how the typical kids would respond and react to her. And if there's one thing that I think the school district can try and create for children who are disabled, this is an immersive program, not necessarily just allowing disabled kids to participate in a school, you know, a regular typical school setting, which they do, but also brings the kids into an environment with typical kids on just typical social levels. I know they have some social clubs around school that I think one of them is, I forget what it's called, it's escaping me, for where they bond with other kids, older kids, during lunchtime. But it's really like only on campus stuff that the interactions exist. And when my daughter would come home, it's almost like some of the girls that she was having relationships with on campus wouldn't even respond to her texts or phone calls or the like outside of campus, which obviously is discouraging and hurts, you know, emotionally, and confidence levels sink. And I think that's kind of something that a lot of disabled kids unfortunately have to deal with, which is how their peers are responding to them when they're in the school setting, and, you know, the awkwardness associated with it. It's called By Your Side. That's what it was. It's a great program. I keep it and, you know, try and continue to encourage that and other programs like it. So I don't want to take up a lot of your time. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any of me about the processes and stuff. But, you know, Liza was able to do some extracurricular stuff. She was on the cheerleading team for a while, and she was in the dance program forever. And, you know, so those were the things that really she got a lot of joy out of. And I would say that as a final thought, the department, you know, when Mr. Riesenberg was there, and I'm not sure if he's still heading it or somebody else, and we worked very closely with Carrie Marlowe, and some other people on the team, speech therapists, the language people over the years, were always very kind and very supportive of Liza. And it was a very, very warm environment for her. And, you know, she's a good kid with a lot of social desires and sociability, which is great. And so when you would meet her, you wouldn't necessarily think that she has some disabilities, but she does. And she will carry those with her for the rest of her life, because the gap widens with her between what she can learn and does learn and what other kids her age are learning. So I appreciate the time. Thanks for focusing on it, Mary, and bringing it up in, you know, a public setting. And to the extent that you guys can throw some additional resources in the department. And by the way, you may know this already, but my wife, Amy, has been a special ed aide in the district for probably 8 or 9 years now. She could use a raise, Doesn't make a lot of money. For the stuff that she deals with, it's a very low-paying job, but you know, she loves it and she gives to it, and she really enjoys going to work. So you got a good player, a good team player in her as well. So thanks for the time, everybody, and thanks for the service that you provide to the school. It's appreciated.
Thank you very much, Greg. It's so great to hear from you, and I really appreciate you being so candid about your experience. I think it's wonderful for all of us to be able to listen to and to take your words to heart. So thank you for spending the time. The next person that we'll hear from, actually, it's not really that we're going to hear from. The next person that I wanted to speak about is two people, really. And the first one is Judy Heumann, who's really the mother of the disability movement. And I would encourage all of you, there's a documentary that was done this last year, and it was actually up for an Academy Award, and it was called Crip Camp. And it's not for children, it's rated R, but for adults, I would encourage you to watch it because you'll learn a lot if you didn't already know about it. But in the 60s, I think it was in the 60s, they had a camp that was for disabled children. It was called Camp Jened, and a lot of kids went to this camp, and it was run by hippies, and it was in that, you know, during that time period. And the kids, many of the kids, for the first time, because they couldn't be in public school, you know, they were segregated and discriminated against because of their disabilities. So they came together at this camp, and for the first time they experienced feeling belonging and being included and being able to be themselves and to be accepted for who they were. And it was really empowering for them. And many of them ended up to be the activists that really led the charge, including Judy Heumann, for the passing of the American Disabilities Act, as well as what came before that with the 504, which is so important to us with schools. And she was one of the first teachers to teach in New York in a wheelchair because she sued the Board of Education. Not that I should be advocating for that, but she was, and she accomplished so much in her time, and it's just a really great story for you to learn about. On that note, I don't know if anybody else wants to talk about that as well. And then the other thing that I wanted to bring up is we have a former teacher that was here before these acts passed, and she was in a wheelchair, and many of you may know of her, and her name was Jill Kilmont, and you may have seen the movie. It was called The Other Side of the Mountain, and she was a rising star, a national champion skier, alpine skier. She was about to be she was on the cover of Sports Illustrated right before she was going to go to the Olympics, and she had an accident that paralyzed her. And as a result of that, she was in a wheelchair, and she ended up getting her degree, her college degree at UCLA, and she wanted to become a teacher, but UCLA denied her because she was in a wheelchair and they didn't think she'd be able to get up and down stairs. So as a result of that, she went to school in Washington. She got her credentials, and when she came back to California to get a job, she couldn't get a job, and everybody kept denying her. But she got a job here at BHUSD at Hawthorne, and she was a teacher here, and I talked to a few people, and Rochelle can really speak to that, about who she was during that time. And I think also Mahal might have a few things to add to that as well. So I'll let you talk.
Thank you, Mary. I would like to tell you that when I was teaching I started in the district about 1963, but Jill Kunman became the special reading teacher at Hawthorne School. And I think the ramp that they have there now should be called the Jill Kinmont ramp, because of her that ramp was built. And she was so well liked, and she was so highly regarded. She taught special reading, and the kids absolutely just worshiped her. And she was there for only a very short time. And then what a person with abilities did, she went out to the Indian reservation to teach the children on the Indian reservation to read. So she was here, she's a handicapped person teaching children who probably wouldn't have that advantage to read on the Indian reservation. She was a marvelous lady, and she, you never felt you never realized that she didn't have a disability. She had no disability. She was just like the rest of us. She had a wheelchair to get up the ramp, but I mean, it was amazing that, and she was so highly regarded and such a special person, and she loved children. And I can just add a little bit about the fact that I think it's because of Jill that Beverly Hills was probably the leader in employing a teacher with a handicap, that they had to make a ramp because nobody else was doing it. She couldn't get a job anywhere else. And she got the job in Beverly Hills. They built the ramp, and as I say, it should be called the Jill Kinmont ramp. I would like to also just mention one or two things about the fact that as a teacher, over the number of years that I've been teaching, I've had the pleasure of knowing how lucky I am, because I've had a number of students who I've had to teach who have had disabilities. And I recall two of them very vividly on my first days at El Rodeo teaching science. One had cystic fibrosis, and the other one couldn't hear anything that I said. And I remember the mother walking in that day and seeing me standing in front of the class, and I'd met her at Horace Mann before I'd gone there, and she saw, oh my God, I'm so lucky. She said, my daughter, she knew how I would be, she knew me already. And I just have to tell you, teaching children with special disabilities is really wide, opens your eyes to how you can adapt and change. And I really, I can't imagine some of the parents, what they go through with their children and abilities, because I think how lucky I am. And I would just like to say that, I would like to just say one more word about when I taught elementary science at Hawthorne. And I would have this, I didn't care who the child was. Every child had to come to me, no matter who they were. If they were special ed, they came to me. But I wanted them in my class, no matter how much they could learn or what I would say. I wanted them to feel science. And I remember telling the teachers at the time, don't schedule that child for his occupational therapy day. Don't schedule him for his physical therapy. I mean, make sure that they can come, or speech. I want them to come to my class. They need to know that they're welcome no matter where they go. And that's the feeling that I wanted them to have. So I thank you for doing this tonight, Mary. It's really very meaningful. And thank you.
Thanks, Rochelle. I think maybe we should go around and then we can add more comments. But Alex, would you like to add comments?
Yes. First, I would like to say thank you to all of our speakers for sharing your personal stories and how the Americans with Disabilities Act has impacted your family, and it's incredible to hear. And just as a student and a student leader on campus, I'm very familiar with the By Your Side Club that was mentioned, that does, incredible things for the student body and really, wants to create a supportive and wonderful environment that I think all students deserve to have during their time in the district. But there's always more to be done. There can always be more, more inclusivity, and that's why. And thank you, Mary, for President Wells, for bringing this to the table. Thank you.
Just one additional word. I want to thank the speakers for coming this evening. I know Alma, but I'm getting a new friend in Adele, and I'm going to go over and visit her at her home, and it's not too far from me. And to the Bells, I thank you for sharing your story. I think it was wonderful, and I really thank you for taking care of this tonight, Mrs. Wells.
Same comments as Alex so eloquently put it. Welcome, by the way. Really, thank you to all the speakers for sharing your stories, the candor, the strength, the courage. Sharing these stories is incredibly important. The perspective is incredibly important. And I love this Spotlight series. So thank you, President Wells.
Yes, thank you everyone for sharing tonight. It's to see the vivacity in people who suffer from disabilities, or I don't want to assume they're suffering. I saw a concert in Colorado which featured a visually impaired pianist, Matthew Whitaker, who played Rhapsody in Blue. And we sat just outside the venue, you probably know the one I'm talking about, in Aspen, and listened to this incredible concert and this incredible 21-year-old pianist who had lost his sight. And you sit there and think, I wish I had half the talent as this guy. You know, it didn't matter that there was a disability. It's just what he brought to the world was remarkable. And I think when we can look at people individually and see what they contribute, no matter what their status is in life, it's a miracle. It's really a wonderful thing. So thank you for sharing this.
Thank you. I think it's, I had a couple thoughts. One was that when I was looking at Jill Kinmont, I looked up some information on her, and her husband, after she passed, he told a story about one of her students at Hawthorne who had contacted her because she was his remedial reading teacher, and he wanted her to know that he had overcome his reading challenges and he had just passed the bar. So I thought that was just such a great comment from her husband after she had passed. And as well, I spoke with Andy Lick this week as well, because he was at Hawthorne during that time, and he as well spoke about what an impression it made to have her there as a teacher. And it was, at that time people weren't really very exposed to people with disabilities because they didn't have access. And so, and what an impression it made on him at that time, and how wonderful she was and how adored she was. I think one common theme that I see when I had been looking into this is the spirit of, wanting to overcome your disability and to not have it define you, and to really fight to be seen and to have, the equal rights. It's really about civil rights, and it's really, and what I said at the beginning of this is it's also for all of us as well. So we're all going to join that group at some point, be it temporary or permanent. Closed caption on TV. It's, all of these things, they didn't come easily, and they didn't come without a fight. And I think for all of us to remember that, to appreciate that, and to continue to make certain that we continue to make that accessibility for all people to live their best life, especially here at the school.
I'd also like to just thank our speakers, and Alma said something that I think is a really important takeaway for us, and that is, the disability may not be seen. And so we've come a long way. The school setting, the school structure has changed so much as we have grown up, and we do a lot for our inclusion practices, but it is really about so many people judging a book by its cover, so many people making judgments, and it's really without getting to know somebody, because there's just so much that's hidden about disabilities. So I think that's a real big takeaway for me to hear that again tonight, because there's just so much that you don't know about somebody until you get to know them.
So I just want to say thank you to the speakers again for being here this evening. I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate you sharing your story, and sharing it with the community, and allowing us to get to know you better, so that we can be more connected and see ourselves in you. So thank you.
Mary, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar, but I'd like to withhold item F and E, and wonder if anybody else has any other item to withhold.
I do not.
Okay,
Anyone
I make
else?
a motion to approve the consent calendar without item F and E and F.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5. Oh, where's Mandy? We lost Mandy. Are you there? Mandy, did you say yes? Okay. Motion passes 5-0 with a preferential vote from Alex. All right. I'll make a motion for item E.
I'll
Michelle?
second.
The motion was made by myself and seconded by Mr. Halimi. Mrs. Marcus?
Yes, I pulled this because in going through it, there's about 3 or 4 items on here that I'm kind of concerned about. I'm thinking that we should pull it from today and maybe come back with it. It's not an emergency at this point, I don't think. I was concerned about 3 items on the contract. One was a 5% administrative fee. I found that to be, if our bill is, let's say, for the whole year, $50,000 or $500,000 to the to this attorney fee for this law firm, we would be paying about $25,000, and I thought that was a little bit excessive. I don't know that that's something that would, do we really spend that much money on administrative fees? I thought that was a little bit excessive, and that is probably our biggest law firm that we give money to, so I was concerned about that. I was also concerned about something called a consulting fee of 5%. If they have to hire a consultant, they are going to tack 5% on to the fee, and I don't understand why that needs to be. Also, there was something that confused me a little bit about, well, that almost like they could be doing double billing, and I didn't understand. They could be doing something and then do something else, and then they could be double billing for it, and that bothered me. And lastly, I'm concerned about the 3-year contract. I remember the last time we had a legal contract come up, we were talking about 1-year contracts and so on. So for those 4 reasons, I would like to have a little more talk about this item before we so I'd like to either pull it or table it or whatever. That's my concern.
Alex, I'm going to go back to Alex first. Did you have any comments on this or questions?
I don't know.
Gabe?
I'm happy to pull and have a further discussion. I don't think it's that urgent. Maybe we can tell. No, it's not. So we can have a further conversation. I think I do have answers to some of your questions, but I was also just curious if we've gone through any process. I mean, I know we're currently using AALR, but I was curious whether we've interviewed any other firms. Do we go through any kind of a bidding process? I had some procedural questions as well. So I'm happy to pull it and have a further a conversation at some point if we need to.
I have some questions also. Noah, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask staff, and Raphael or Wade, you can answer. As far as the first point with the 5% administrative charge, one, I don't have past contracts. Was that part of previous contracts? And that was the same in lieu of the other expenses? And do we run an analysis to see if it's a better deal for us to have the 5% or a better deal for them? Okay.
I do think just for just for clarification too, that this is very similar to past contracts that we've had. There was a bit of a upcharge just in their overall charge, right. But I believe that we've done some comparing, and they're still a little bit less than some of the other attorney firms. We've been using them for a long time, and I just want to just respond to Mrs. Marcus that the 1-year contract that we had was really for our attorney that was working in construction when we had asked for a 1-year contract with Mr. Tao.
I have a couple comments as well. I have the same questions actually that Rochelle brought up. The 5% on the admin fee, what I would call double billing. I went back and I looked at other contracts to see if we have that language in other contracts that we have with our other law firms that we have contracts with, and I haven't seen it. As well, the administration charge, I haven't seen that on other contracts. And the consulting markup of 5%. The other thing that I'd like to see is this contract bills it bills by the quarter, and I would rather see this at 1/10, which I also saw in other contracts that we have. It bills in 1/10 increments, and I think
of an hour?
Yes.
Okay.
And so I think that I'd like to see this at 1/10 as well versus the way that billing is set up. I agree about the 1 year. I don't see why we would need to commit to 3-year increases and a 3-year contract when we can come back the next year, and if we need to look at rates again, we can look at rates. I don't have an issue with the increase in the rate at all. I think that for me, it's just I went back and I looked at a couple of our other contracts that we have, and we don't have those terms that are here are not in our other contracts with other law firms, and so I think we're better off negotiating this further.
But Mary or Rochelle, can you point out the language that you see with the double billing?
I think it's C, 1C in the contract. Let me see. I'm sorry, not one. It's under terms and conditions. It's number C. The law firm may charge the full hourly rate to more than one client for services provided concurrently during the same time.
Right.
standard.
I mean, a lot of law firms do that. Like
Right.
if they're if for example an attorney had to travel to us, and they're in the car, typically some well I won't say to typically some law firms charge for travel time, and they may have a lower rate accordingly. But if they have to take a phone call in the car ride to have a conversation with a different client while they're traveling, then they may be billing two clients.
Right, that's double billing, and that's what I object to. And I don't think that all law firms do that. And
all law firms certainly don't do that.
They don't do that, and I object to it.
But I won't say it's a totally atypical term either. I've seen it both ways.
I'm not suggesting that these are atypical. I'm suggesting that we should negotiate them and that we can do better. Does anyone else have any comments? So
motion to approve it?
what was your motion again? It was to pull?
Make the motion.
I think you made the motion,
you made
Mary,
a
and I
motion?
second the motion.
So I would withdraw that motion and make a motion to table this item.
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, but we do have to ask. It looks like the current contract ends at the end of August.
Yes.
Okay, so just the board needs to be aware that we have
It
to
would.
have something in place before then.
It would just continue month to month. Per
Is
the
that-
terms of this, I would imagine that our prior agreement did the same.
Is that correct? Okay, thanks.
So, no, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Mandy? Dr. Stern?
She waved yes, I said.
Okay, thank you. The motion passes 5-0 with a preferential vote from Alex.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion for item F, the approval of Imagine Learning curriculum.
I'll second.
Mrs. Marcus, that's you?
Yes, I just wanted to point out that this, it's not to withhold it or anything like that. I just want to point out this is, again, the continuing attempt, along with the AIR tutors, to make sure that our kids have ample opportunities to improve, to get tutoring and what have you, and so that they can set their academic goals, and then we can customize their study habits and their classes and so on, so that we are really pushing to try to improve the educational experience for our children. So I just want to tell the administration and the education services and some student services how much I appreciate these items to help our students get better during the when it comes up during the year.
All
And
right.
Thank
I
you.
really would like to just compliment the staff for that. And so that was the reason I pulled it, not for any other reason than just to show the people that we are really trying to give the students a lot of help if they need it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marcus. Any other comments?
No.
I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0 with a preferential vote from Alex Bowden. The next item on the agenda is reports, and first will be Dr. Brady and Superintendent report.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Bowden, your job from now on is to minimize those boxes. Thank you. This will help you too shortly. So good evening, everyone. We had a moment of silence, and I appreciate everybody's participation in that. Losing an employee of ours is always very difficult. And Calvin being a 15-year employee of our school district, it's very difficult. It was very shocking to us, as well to the family, and also our BHUSD family. And this is just a recent picture that was taken right here at a board meeting. And I see Carol Cornier in the audience as well, who was in this picture. This is definitely a keeper now, for sure. And we're very sad, but we're really glad people were able to go to Calvin's funeral this morning. And we had a good employee turnout, and we're very proud of that kind of support. So we're going to miss him very much. Moving on to some Rotary news. As we increase our relationship with the city and our Rotary, the president of the Rotary, J.R. Zubak, invited us to come and do a presentation. And so I want to thank Dustin Seaman and Cindy Dubin for going to our Rotary meeting yesterday and did a presentation, shared our pathways and our programs, and we had an opportunity to brag a lot about what we've done since reconfiguration. It was a really cool moment. Mel Spitz was there, who was on the board and was president of the board when I was hired. And then I also have Mary Wells there as the president, in having both presidents there and then being able to show and share where we've come. I mean, we've really looked at Education Reimagined, and we were able to share that publicly along with this publication, and we were able to give everybody a copy, and I think that people were really overwhelmed and shocked and surprised and so proud of what's happened over the last several years. So it was a great opportunity to be there. We certainly appreciate these types of invitations, and they have asked us to keep coming back with more. So there'll be more partnerships with Rotary. A quick update on grandparent permits. We've had our approval for our round 2. If you remember, our policy was to include up to 100 permits for our grandparents that are living within the attendance area in Beverly Hills. And so we are up to 79 total for the applications that have been approved, and students are being placed into classes. We've done a really good job. It's not perfect, and we said that when we were creating the policy. We have some grade levels that are full, and we have some people that are struggling with some of the application process and getting the necessary things in. But we're working individually with a lot of families. This has been a lot more staff work. So thank you to Ms. Chisholm, Rebecca Starkins, and just staff and student services. There's a lot of back and forth when it comes to something new and a permit like this, permit process. But we feel really good about what's been done, and we feel good about even for next year as we continue to evolve in this process. But to do something as late as we did, in the summer, and to have 79 students that are grandchildren of residents of Beverly Hills, we feel really good about that, and we're super excited that they're going to be in our classrooms in August. We've had a couple of meetings with the board, a cabinet meeting with the Board of Education. And this is a really unique opportunity that we've had to have instructional conversations, to have conversations about what is excellence, what is accountability, how do you measure excellence, what does that look like? And we've just had some great conversations about how does that fit into a strategic plan. And I'm really proud of the conversations that we've had. I say this, and people always get tired of hearing me say that I've been the superintendent for 12 years, but this is the first time I've had this robust of a conversation with a Board of Education. And that feels really good. I mean, I feel like we could have talked for days, and we will continue to do so. But I'm really proud of the fact that, we're looking at a strategic plan that's truly dynamic. People say that. People like to say that it's a living document, but they rarely do that. And it usually does wind up on a shelf. We're really looking at a dynamic, malleable strategic plan and a new one every 3 years. And I'm really proud that we are in agreement that it needs to grow and it needs to change with us as we change. And I'm really appreciative of this opportunity to kind of modernize it too, because strategic plans have been around for a really long time, and you could kind of get mired down in certain areas in formatting, and we did a little bit, to be quite honest, and it takes the focus away from what we're really trying to do, and most importantly, it takes away from other people trying to understand it. And so this is an exciting process for us as we bring this back to our larger leadership team in the next several days to really start to tackle the tough work and then bring that back to our board. And we will look forward to sharing those updates with the community as well. We have our new construction company is our CMs and bond manager. They've hit the ground running, and so Fonder Solari, they're on our sites. We have people working, and just as some construction updates here, they're looking at our current schedules that we have, and El Rodeo is coming along nicely, and if all goes well with the schedule, right now it looks like that will be December of 23 where that will be substantial completion, and then also for the high school with B3, B4, we're still looking at about June of 25 for the substantial completion. But that work is going, and we're really excited to see that continue. And talked a little bit just earlier about just reconfiguration, about our Rotary presentation, about our pathways that we've done. And we've talked a lot about that over the years. And we're kind of nearing that next step now when El Rodeo opens. And so we're going to be looking forward to, in a short time, in just a year and a few months, that we will be moving our population, all students from Hawthorne, into state-of-the-art facilities. Hands down, will be one of the best facilities in California. So we're really excited about that. And that's something that we've been talking about now for about 5 years. And we're getting to that place where we're putting the final cap on reconfiguration. I know, Alex, you're right there. You get to see yourself right there. But I just want to say I am so excited about Alex joining the school board. We had an opportunity. It's been such a crazy summer that usually I like to meet earlier with our student board members, but we had a nice meeting yesterday. And this is one of my favorite parts of the job. So is to be able to work with students, and this is a pretty exciting and rare opportunity for some of our students to look at how a school district is run from 30,000 foot view. And it's Alex has great questions. She's excited, and she's going to be really fun to work with. And she's got her own style, and we love that. So officially welcome. We're really excited to be able to work with you. Quick welcome to Dr. Christine Kim, who is going to be an assistant principal at Hawthorne Elementary School. So we welcome her and all of the knowledge and experience that she brings. She has great instructional knowledge and experience, and we're super excited to be able to work with her. We do have National Night Out that is coming up. Again, as we increase our partnerships with the city, this is something that's been there, but as we get to know the city more and the relationships, continue to develop, these are activities that we're being invited to partake in, and we have not done this in the past, but it's a great opportunity to look at safety. And so as a school district, we have committed to attend National Night Out. We'll have a table and a booth, and we'll have materials, and more than anything, it's really to demonstrate to the community that safety is 24 hours, 7 days. We share the same kids, whether they're in school or residents in homes, and this is just a great opportunity for us to just demonstrate that to the public, that this is an important partnership, and it has fits nicely into our See Something, Say Something, strategies. And so we're looking forward to attending and representing Beverly Hills Unified School District at National Night Out. The last thing I have, and I know that there's going to be some public comment on this as well. We are, I wish I had an update for you. I don't. I know that the city has put out information about indoor masking. Ours is a little different from the city. So we're waiting for LA County to find out what we're doing. One of our most successful programs has been to have students, your mask, your choice. So that's been a very successful program for us. But we are waiting anxiously for Friday to determine, what is going to be in store for us for at least what's being directed to us by LA County. And then we will be meeting as a cabinet and board very soon to show our next steps on how we're going to handle that. And that's my report for this evening.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Alex, we'll start with you. Any comments for Dr. Brady?
Just thank you for the report. Very comprehensive, and it's exciting to see as we go into this new school year. I think this is going to be the school year because this is kind of our first year, reconfiguration. Yep. We've gotten used to, yep. To an extent, and then, with the pandemic, and I feel like this is going to be the first year where we get to experiment with everything that we wanted to, and I'm excited to see that happen.
Totally agree.
Mrs. Marcus?
Well, again, thank you for that very comprehensive report, Dr. Brady. It was really wonderful. I just often get the question, well, what's going to happen to Hawthorne? And people have always asked me, well, where are they going to go? I said, well, it's a transition. The kids that are at Hawthorne are going to go to El Rodeo. It's just like moving back home, so to speak. But I wondered if the community, it's all up in the air and everything, but there are a lot of plans for Hawthorne, a lot of ideas swirling around, and I don't really want to put anything out there right now for people to start, but there are a lot of plans for it. Hawthorne isn't going to go away. It's going to get used, and it's a big part of our school district. So I just want to let people know that we will have lots of plans and lots of things that we can do, and tune in later to find out.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up because I think sometimes when we don't say it, people start to make assumptions, and that is a beautiful property, and that's not something that BHUSD would ever give up. And we're excited to be able to utilize that property as we prepare for the future. So many discussions about early childhood centers, district offices. There's so many programs that we're looking at that space for that will continue to evolve over the next year or so, and we'll share that with the public. But it's Hawthorne, and it will always be Hawthorne.
And one other thing, I was thinking about the picture of the award that we gave him with my friend Carol on that night, and I didn't even know I saw him here that night. And I heard his name, but to think that we gave him an award and then he passed away is kind of
shocking,
sad. And I was sorry to hear that was who had passed away because I really didn't know him that well at all.
Yeah.
And
thank you, Dr. Brady, for your report. A couple questions regarding the grandparent permits. Do we? First of all, with the numbers that we saw that said accepted, was that accepted and enrolled, or just people that have been accepted? And is there a sense about enrollment?
So I had just clicked offline, and I apologize. The total number of applications we had, there was 115 total applications, and out of the 115, we were able to place 79 into classrooms for August.
So those are people that have actually enrolled based on their acceptance.
Yep, they are starting in August. Mm-hmm.
Great. Congrats to everybody.
Yeah, it's great.
And thank you again to Laura for all of her hard work. A question though, so I know that there were a number of grades, as you mentioned, that were full, and I know that there were a number of parents that have contacted me. I'm sure more have contacted Laura that have said, well, one of my kids was accepted. another child, unfortunately, the grade was full. Are we doing any kind of like a wait list just in case there, does become availability, someone, doesn't end up enrolling their kid? I'm just curious how we're handling that. I'm sorry to drag you all the way to the front of the room, Laura. Yeah, stretch your legs for a minute.
So we do have kind of a wait list, but what we're facing, honestly, is just those grades are impacted. So, TK, first grade, third grade, we've already opened 3 new sections of TK just for enrollment since we've opened universal TK. And first grade, we didn't have any space at all even to start to offer. So I don't want to give anybody false hope because, while we're enrolling the grandparent permits, we're also have a stack of new resident enrollees too. So, unless it kicks us over to where we have to open another section, I'm not sure that it will happen. So I just want to be honest and transparent.
Great. I mean, one thing I just want to be clear on for the community's sake, because this is something that's come up a couple of times as parents have contacted me. I'm sure many, many more have contacted you. That we do have that 25% maximum that we're sticking with. So we're leaving 75% of the available seats continuing to be open
for residents.
Yes. Right. Okay. Yes. So I think I've heard from parents on, I won't say sides, but the concerned parents from our community that like what happens if there's one new child now and do we have to open up a whole new section?
Right.
The answer to that is no. We're being very conservative as a board.
Correct.
And as an administration for the following year.
Because that was the directive of the board to not open sections specifically to accommodate grandparent permits. It was only for new residents. But if we do get to the point where we have to open that new section, of course we would still have that availability for grandparent permits with that new section. It's just we're bumping up against the line but not crossing over it.
Right. We actually looked at some data too, though. So because we were really surprised at how many students moved into the district. There are states, that have later, school starts later in the year. So we actually looked at the last few years' data just to see, and some people will move into the district thinking that we go back later.
Yeah.
There's some states in the Midwest, I think they have a law where you can't start after Labor Day.
Right.
So we look back and because that made us nervous. That's why we took the conservative approach because there were a couple of years where we had a family come in and there was twins and there was we did have to come back to the board and ask for another FTE to open up another section. And that was hard because we had already started and then we were moving students in with a new teacher because we had too many students.
I also believe that in protecting us for this particular situation, we took 10 spaces off the very top before we went to the 25%. So it's even a higher number that are still available for people who move into the district.
And a couple of grades where we are cutting into those 10 spaces right now with new move-in enrollments. So that was a wise thing to do.
I don't have any more questions about the grandparent permits. I'm not sure while Laura's up here if anyone else has questions for her.
Thank you,
Laura.
for everything.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Regarding the strategic plan, I wanted to thank you, Dr. Brady, and I wanted to thank your administration for also being very open to some of the new ways that we kind of took the strategic plan. We worked with a great plan we had for last year. We brought in some new ideas, new structure, new metrics, and I want to applaud you and the administration for being very open to that. I can imagine that there may be some out there that may not like, having too many metrics. It's always a thing in management, like how closely do you want to be tracked? And I just want to compliment you and your administration for being very open to that and looking forward to continuing to work on that together. And I think our session coming up in a week or two. Thank you for clarifying the Hawthorne to El Rodeo thing. I know there were a number of questions about that, and I'll save comments regarding COVID-19 and masks for board communications. Thank you, Dr. Brady.
Well, I just want to again welcome Alex. I'm really looking forward to your time here. I feel like it's been a seamless transition because you've been so dedicated sitting in the audience for as long as you have been. It feels like you were there for months watching the meetings. And so it just feels so natural to see you sitting there. So welcome. And thank you for investing the time that you did before you came on the board. I really appreciate that. And I am also really happy to hear about our city partnerships and how much that relationship is growing. I think it's growing in so many ways. And, the city is fire, police, and schools. And I really feel that we are really stepping up into that in a really meaningful way. We're not just saying it, we really are. And I really appreciate you and your administration for really fostering that and making that happen. And I think we're going to see the benefits of that in our security program and all the things that we do. In our CTE program, when we were at Rotary on Monday, so many professionals signed up to participate, be it Career Day or the Career Talks or for internships or mentoring. And I think that it's really great that we're engaging the city and the community more with our school. And I think that this is another great piece for communicating that. So I think it's we're in a great start for this year. And I think the other thing that came out of our cabinet and board planning session is that we are all so excited. And I think we have such a great positive attitude about going into this school year. And I think the ideas and the planning and the strategic planning, we all are, our eyes are forward and upward, and we are all looking to strive for excellence. And I think everybody, the energy and the positive energy is palatable. And I'm really looking forward to this and our continued partnership with Cabinet and with you. And I think that our team as a whole is so strong. Next, we have Alex Bowden and her student board report.
I have to share my screen. 1 second. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So for my first student board report, I will be focusing on a trip that ASB here at the high school, our executive cabinet, so our student body president, vice president, student board member, secretary, and treasurer, went on earlier in July to the CADA/CASEL. CADA is the California Association of Directors of Activities, and CASEL is the California Association of Student Leaders. And so we attended the summer leadership camp at UC Santa Barbara, and I'll give you a little background on what that is. Basically, schools from around California, their student leaders, their student government leaders, attend this camp, and we kind of get mixed in with all the other students. So we were all separated, the 5 of us, and put into groups, and basically in a kind of simulated situation of being in an ASB with complete strangers. And we were able to bounce ideas off of each other and get inspired by other student leaders at other schools across the state and some out of state, who, we all have the same goal of creating a positive and exciting environment for students on campus. And it was really, incredible to meet so many new students. And we learned a lot. We learned, new ideas from student activities, lunch activities, student and staff appreciation, and pep rallies, and even things that you wouldn't immediately think of when thinking of student government. We learned about interpersonal communication skills and mindfulness, and skills that student leaders and people who want to make an impact on their campuses need to have. And there were also loads of keynote speakers who shared their stories, and it was just an absolutely incredible experience. And we were at UC Santa Barbara, which is a beautiful campus if you've ever been there. And, staying in the dorms was an interesting experience. But yeah, we got a college feel too. And then I do have some pictures and a video that I made that I'm going to show you right now. And I know President Wells has seen a little bit of this already on my student board member Instagram. So this is our day one, the day we first arrived, and those are the 4 other members of the executive cabinet. This is day 2, so this was very activity heavy, and that was a great day. This is like a pep rally that we did where we were thrown in groups with other schools. This is supposed to be day 3, sorry. Another really exciting day. We went to the beach. Exploring UC Santa Barbara's campus was also incredible.
Go Gauchos.
Yes, go Gauchos. And while I was there, I actually happened to see a student I know who just graduated from the high school who was there for a freshman orientation. And that was really cool to see, to know someone already on a college campus. And then this is our last day that we left, and there's us leaving with our advisor, the amazing Mr. Hengler. And then I do have a video to show you, but I should turn my volume up for that. So yeah, that was the trip. It was an absolutely incredible trip, and this is the first time that the high school ASB has attended this trip, and then it becomes a tradition for ASB in the future. And I recently found out that they also have a camp for the middle school, so hopefully that also becomes a tradition at BVMS as well. And that's it.
Well, I was going to save my welcome to the very end, but everybody else has already been chiming in, Alex. I want to tell you what a pleasure it is to have you, and I get the pleasure of sitting next to you. So we do pass notes. If you want to send me any notes, I'll be happy to answer any questions. First of all, I was, when you started to show this about the thing at University of California at Santa Barbara, I thought to myself, gee, I don't remember the other board members ever doing that. And I thought, wow. And then to hear you now tell me that it's the first time that the group has ever gone, I think it's wonderful, and I'm really glad that they've started to. I don't know if this is the first time we've gone, and I doubt that it's the first time that it's ever been held, because it looks like it's quite an event. And I just want to tell you that I'm sure that the ideas that you come away with make it all worth your going, because you come away with ideas that they have at other schools and other communities and what they're doing, and you get a lot of ideas, and I can't wait to bring them back and do them. So that's always something you come away with. And the other thing I'm sure you came away with was some new friends that you will connect with during the year and talk about, and other school board members and what they're doing and so on. So I think for you it was a wonderful opportunity, and I'm glad you went, and I'm grateful that you shared it with us, and I welcome you again to the board.
Thank you so much. I actually have a comment to make about something you just said. When I was at that camp, it was very interesting to learn that this position that I have on this board is extremely unique. I did not meet a single other student board member, or if I did, it was kind of a group of students because of how big some of these districts are. And this is a position that is so unique and an incredible opportunity that very, very few students across this country have, and I'm very grateful for it.
Very cool, Alex. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm so excited for you, not only for getting to participate in that camp, to be able to do it on the UC Santa Barbara campus, which is just such an amazing place. Go Gauchos. No, really incredible. I think you guys stayed in my old dorm, which was so cool to see. But getting yourselves, there and investing that time, I'm sure was a lot of fun. You didn't look at it as an investment, but I'm sure it's going to pay dividends for all the student activities that are going to happen this year and after that. So, kudos to you and the rest of the leadership team for kind of taking that on. Thank you for sharing your Instagram handle. You now have 61 followers. I just added you while we were going through that, and welcome to this board. I look forward to spending some time together over the next 6 months that I'm here. You will outlive me on this board, and if I can ever be a resource to you in any way, please just feel free to ask. And welcome. Excited to have you.
Thank you for the report, Alex. So, one sentence, what was the best takeaway you had from the event?
Being a student leader is incredibly exhausting, but so rewarding. After that camp, I came home and I slept for the entire day. Exhausting, but amazing.
Thank you.
I don't have any other further comments except it looked like a great trip, and already you've brought back information. I think the middle school opportunity is fantastic to hear about as well. So thank you for going.
And just thank you for jumping in with both feet. Being at the district office, I think we kept you hours, and the time flew by. But I think you were able to get a great introduction of just even in the summer, there's just a flurry of activity in our district office. So welcome.
All right. If there's Dr. Stern, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hi. So, Alex, first of all, thank you so much for that, and congratulations on everything you've done, and thank you for joining us. We're very excited. And backing up a little bit, too, I just want to say regarding Dr. Brady's report, I want to say that it sounds like we're really at a time of exciting new frontiers for our school. I think that, I'm really looking forward to the El Rodeo in about a year or so coming online. I think it will be a great facility, a great place for our kids, and I'm really excited too about the continued interest in the grandparent permitting. But that's all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. We got caught talking. All right. If there's no other comments, then I'll move on to the next agenda item, and that is Mr. Seaman.
We actually have a meeting for reports. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's after. I apologize.
You're trying to get rid of me already? Good evening, Board of Education. What we wanted to do is be able to try to, again, close out kind of the old strategic plan with a series of videos. And so we still are in the process of being able to present not only goal 1, which is student growth, but also a professional learning goal, which was goal 2. So this evening, we're going to be able to show a video to be able to close out our professional learning goal, which is goal 2. And then I'm going to do a brief presentation at the end of that. So it's almost going to be like a 1.A, where I'm going to be able to provide you with some preliminary data of where we have performed in the 21-22 school year, and then bring that back with our actual video, with our student feedback. We had an opportunity to work with a lot of students across the district from TK through 12th grade, but that's a much more robust video. And so we didn't want to show 2 videos in one night and let the student growth one get lost. So we'll do the professional learning and then bring the student growth back. So I'm going to step out in the hallway so it doesn't echo.
Dustin, we can't hear.
Can someone please tell Dustin he needs to turn his speakers on his computer all the way up for it to work?
This is God speaking. Did he hear that? Okay. He got it. I'm glad you're with us.
Still nothing over here? No. I did screen share.
You can try and share it from here?
Yes, please.
My name is Justin Seaman. I am the Assistant Superintendent of Education Services here.
This is brutal.
I'm actually just closing up my 5th year here. Within our strategic plan, our primary goal was to leverage student data in delivering professional development to our teachers. And what does that look like within our schools? Within the elementary realm, we typically call those our data chats. It's taking information around our students and allowing our teachers and our administration to collaborate around what are the best next steps for those students and for possibly that grade band or even the school at large. In the secondary realm, it is a lot of work around our professional learning communities. The data chats are PLCs too, which is professional learning communities, but we're very explicit in utilizing those terms in the secondary realm. And that the exact same thing happens at the secondary level. Whether it be the biology department is meeting to discuss a common assessment, to our English department is meeting to discuss a common assessment for the whole grade level. And that allows both administration and teachers to be able to see where students are and where we need to take them from there.
I'm Katie Carter. I'm the math department chair at Beverly Vista Middle School. This year in our professional development for the math department, when we went to online learning, we gained some wonderful new teachers in the math department that we hadn't met before. So one of the things that we did is we got to know our new teachers and shared our experiences with one another, which was great. We also took advantage of that opportunity to be able to go over and review our curricula for each of our classes and our pathways and our pacing guides and things like that, just to make sure we were all still on the same page and made whatever tweaks and changes we needed to do. And it was great to work with one another, also be able to get ideas from one another. During COVID, when we were out on online learning, we all learned new strategies to work with our students. And so that was great to share those. And I feel like we're all much better teachers now and learned how to work with our co-teachers better and be able to work with each one of our individual students and get them what they needed.
Hi, my name is April Goldsobel, and I am the department chair for history here at BVMS. Go Bulldogs! We are so grateful for all the PD opportunities we have been afforded. In the history department, we have been really focusing on argumentative writing. We've been using a document-based question, also known as the DBQ model, for many years, and to continue our growth with the DBQ project, document-based questions, where students take primary sources, they analyze them, and they learn to create an argument and defend their argument using evidence and analysis. We actually were afforded the opportunity for a second training session this past October to fine-tune our already solid skills. To take the DBQ writing model a step further, the history department decided to adopt the CER model, which is part of the Next Gen Science program here at the middle school. And CER stands for Claim Evidence Reasoning. And so we turned our argumentative writing into a claim evidence reasoning model to kind of create that common language to unify our entire middle school. And not only are the science and history departments already using this writing model, Next year at BVMS, a CER model is going to be a focus for the entire school in all content areas. We love being ahead of the curve in the history department. We are so grateful for all of the PD opportunities we have been afforded. When we asked for time to collaborate, we are given. We're asked to have a trainer come, it's been provided. We are so grateful. Thank you so very much.
I'm Samantha Thorson. I'm the department chair for the science department at BVMS. And this year we were super lucky to get Liz to come and train us on NGSS, which are the next generation science standards. It was really great because we did unit planning. So we learned how to make effective assessments that actually assess the students' understanding of the standards. So making assessments based on the standards, making rubrics to grade those assessments, and then working backwards to figure out what the kids need to know in order to be able to be successful in that standard. Did a lot of CER training, which stands for Claim Evidence Reasoning, which is perfect because it's going to be BVMS's focus next year is going to be on CERs, so the science department is going to get to lead on that. For the CERs, the students were doing the 5 E's, which is engage, explore, explain, elaborate, evaluate. And we really focused on the engage, explore, explain part of it, where the kids, instead of it being the reverse where we explain a whole bunch of stuff and then the kids do a lab about that, instead the kids are doing a lab or doing something hands-on where they're exploring something before they actually even know what it is, and then taking what they learn from that explore, and then when we explain it to them, being able to connect, oh, that thing that I'm learning right now is what I was looking at yesterday when I was doing that lab, that really cool lab. And then using their explore, explain to then write in science and make a claim, use evidence from their lab, and then use reasoning from that explain to write a CER about that subject. They take all those CERs, they take all that understanding, and then they're successful in their assessment at the end. So we were able, as a department, to really dive into all of that with Liz, and we got 3 pull-out days to do all those trainings with her and really explore how we can get even better with the new science standards and help our kids be successful.
One of the primary focuses of our strategic plan was really making sure that we were creating common language amongst our administrative team to be able to then go back to our teaching staff and be able to articulate what we want our professional development to look like from TK to 12th grade in BHUSD. One way that we did this was being able to work with Michael McDowell and studying some of John Hattie's work. And we really honed in on that 1 year's growth in 1 year's time was the primary focus of our professional development.
So I'm Marla Weiss. I teach both in the math and science departments, AP Biology, Geometry, and Honors Algebra 2 Trig. The goal for the school year was, for the staff, was to try and demonstrate 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. It's kind of difficult to assess, but throughout the process, of which I think this year it was different because it was a process, we were able to kind of go throughout the year or throughout the semester of the visits and look at how the kids were able to do a little bit more self-assessment and learn more about how they learn and what they can do to improve their own learning.
Hi, I'm Sarah Kaver. I'm the principal at Hawthorne Elementary School. I just finished my 20th year in BHUSD, and I'm starting my 5th year as principal at Hawthorne. Our goal for BHUSD across the board was to grow 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. So we asked ourselves and we asked our teachers, how do you grow a year? And so one of the ways that we asked our teachers to grow this year was to participate in PLCs. PLC stands for Professional Learning Community, and it's about peers helping each other to be better. We have a community of great teachers, and they can be excellent with the help of each other. TK through 12th grade have professional learning communities, or PLCs. In PLCs, there's 3 components: data, instructional strategies, and classroom implementation. Our data piece, which the high school and middle school refer to simply as PLCs, the elementary school refers to as data chats. So whether we're talking about PLCs or data chats, when we talk about data, we are looking at a common assessment across a grade level. We might be looking at French and how the students are doing in a French class, or science, or just language arts reading goals in an elementary second grade classroom. When we're looking at data, we have a whole bunch of numbers with us without any other information. And what we need is every adult that interacts with those students to give us some information about who that child is and how they're reacting. So if we have a student that has no growth, we want to know what happened there. And if we have a student who had exceptional growth during a period of time, we also want to know what happened there. And so data chats are not just about looking at data, but to understand why the data is relevant and what we're seeing to either duplicate it or change it for the next round. The way that we get this information is to bring together classroom teachers, special education teachers, and any other support teachers that have information about that student. And we meet about 6 to 8 weeks. After working with Michael McDowell and learning all about the research that John Hattie did, it's really evident that all of teaching is about craft and how we teach our kids. And so we spent a lot of time this year talking about and working on teacher instruction, so that when we go to implementation and actual classroom strategies, we know that it's about better teaching and really clear teaching so that we will see that reflected in our data.
My name is Cami. I teach special education here at Beverly Vista, and I was pursuing the Exceptional Needs Certificate, which spans the grade levels of kindergarten through 12th grade. And yeah, I had such a great experience. I love learning, and I always want to be the best teacher, show up the best teacher for my kids every single day. I think there's no better way to show that your love of learning by modeling it and doing it yourself. And so just to keep fine-tuning my practice and to be the best teacher that I can. Starting this back in 2020 was definitely an unusual summer, and all of us were feeling really disconnected, having been on Zoom for so long. So meeting every week with the cohort was absolutely, we'll say, life-changing. So it was, we met with Michael, Dr. Sherman, excuse me, and we had 2 amazing instructors who guided us through the process of explaining what National Board is and the standards of what an accomplished teacher is. And so those weekly meetings, we were able to reflect and collaborate, learn from one another, read each other's writing, but also expanded my network of working with teachers all over the nation. So there's Facebook groups that I'm now part of that interacting with teachers that I wouldn't have otherwise. So super grateful for this opportunity and the personal growth that I feel like I've developed the last 2 years.
Hi, I'm Pete Van Rossum. I teach social studies at the high school. All right, so considering the materials that we've adopted, I think the exciting thing about them is that they integrate a lot of online resources. They're very visual. They give students a multiple number of different ways to access the curriculum. And I think that's really important nowadays because kids, just looking at a textbook is really not really what they kind of look towards anymore. The way that the materials will integrate with our current instructional practice and increase student learning, they integrate very well with what we're already doing online, Google Classroom, for example. So it's a great way to kind of distribute assignments, to communicate with both parents and students can always look to see where we are if they miss a class or something like that. There's a lot of backup and reinforcement, so they can take kind of charge of their learning a little bit more on their own and figure out things that they might have missed and keep up with things in that regard. Well, I think in terms of the department planning together and trying to be more unified, we had to stop and kind of look at the key concepts we want to teach during the course of the school year, which required us to really do some planning to sort of set some milestones as we go through the course of a semester, to kind of agree on the topics that we want to teach and have a basic understanding of where we should be at any given moment in time, which I think is going to unify and kind of standardize to an extent what we do individually across our department.
Hi, my name is Kim Decatrell. I'm the Assistant Principal of Instruction at Beverly Hills High School, and I've been with the district for the last 3 years and an administrator for 7. So not only have we had the opportunity to learn as an administration and a leadership team, but we've also had the advantage of providing our teachers with many opportunities for their own professional learning. Our new teachers have had the opportunity to participate in our California Teacher Induction Program, known as CTIP.
Hi, my name is Tanya Guerra, and I just finished my CTIP induction presentation. I have had a wonderful experience in CTIP. I was fortunate to be placed with an amazing mentor, Jana Leitner, and she has supported me over the past 5 years. And I've had so many opportunities to grow as an educator and have meaningful discussions with Janet and the rest of the CTIP team. Dr. Michael Sherman has been such a wonderful help and such a great support, and I really can see the growth that I've made over the years, and I am just so thankful for the opportunity to have been able to do this through Beverly Hills Unified School District. I really loved our monthly meetings because it helped see different perspectives of other classrooms, and we got to discuss areas of struggle maybe that other teachers and myself included would have, and get different points of view and tips on how to move forward. So I think that helped us all grow and feel comfortable and realize that we all have ups and downs and obstacles to come over, and how to do them in a positive way and in the best outcomes for our students. I will be graduating the master's program in curriculum and instruction.
The National Board Certification Program through Stanford University is something our veteran teachers have the opportunity to participate in. So in addition to these special programs targeting special groups of teachers, our new teachers and our veteran teachers, we have our evaluation system which supports all of our teachers every year.
I was evaluated this year by Kim Decatrell in my geometry class, and it was the walkthrough cycle. So she was able to come in freely. I think she came in 6 or 7 times. We had great discussions afterwards. One of the nice things this year is the conversations with Ms. Decatrell were not just about the teaching, but also about teaching theory and methodologies. So a lot of the things that I learned a handful of years ago in the CMAS program, we were able to have great discussions with that, and then she also was able to bring in new ways that I can also improve my teaching, which it was more conversational, it was very collaborative, and I think that it was, we embraced the process more than I've seen in the past. When you're evaluated a number of times, or when in my being evaluated a number of times, Ms. Decatrell was able to bring me to be aware of things that I can obviously improve on that I might not be so self-aware of, as if having a video in my room so that I could watch myself teach. And so I think that allowed me to have a little bit more personal growth in my question asking, how to better ask questions instead of one-directional questioning, more interactive questioning and letting the students question with themselves. And I think that was probably one of the biggest benefits of the process.
The foundation of a great education is safety. And so we had the opportunity to partner with the city this year on CPR training for the district. Each site hosted a training that provided our teachers with the skills and information they need to respond with confidence should an emergency occur.
CPR is a life-saving skill, and it's important, especially when it's a teacher, because they have students with it all throughout the day. And also, too, it carries home to their family and their children. Things come up every couple of years as new innovations. For example, now we no longer give breaths. We have ways of doing that. American Heart, with whom we're affiliated, is constantly looking to improve our teaching curriculum to make it bigger and better.
Challenge-based coaching is an opportunity for teachers to work with a technology coach one-on-one for personalized attention in their classrooms. Coaches work with teachers as they implement new instructional strategies in their classrooms, and together they look at what impact it's having on student achievement. In this way, teachers are able to leverage technology to further their instructional practices.
I have loved I4 coaching so much. My favorite part of the week has been my 8:30 sessions with Karen on Tuesday mornings. The coaching has helped me be more thoughtful about my lesson design. Without calling it backward planning, I've learned how to really assess what I want students to learn, develop programs and activities for them to get them to a place where they're doing the learning. And I think to design more engaging activities for all of my students. I think probably my favorite aspect of coaching has been learning to discuss difficult topics with my students that come out of their reading, but might lead us down a dangerous political path. And because I am having the students do all of the research before they can do the discussions, And I'm teaching them through my coaching. I've learned how to teach them to choose media sources that are less biased. We're able to have much better discussions in class that are much less about what we feel and much more about what we've learned. So that's directly come out of my experience with my I4 coach. I think one of the best strategies that I've learned has been TQEs, or thoughts, lingering questions, and epiphanies. So we come up with, the kids work in small groups and they develop questions that we end up talking about in class as they relate to the literature. And then we take those discussions and we start mapping them. So I use something called a spiderweb map, and we graph the discussion so that students can actually see how many times they've participated, how many times they've asked a question, and how many times they've pushed the conversation forward. They also see when they don't speak. So all of those discussions are assessed, they're given a grade, 1 grade for the class and 1 grade individually. And I think it's improved my discussion in my classes more than I ever thought was possible. And I thought I did a decent job with discussions before, but this encourages quieter students to speak, and it also encourages more vocal students to listen and to ask questions of their more quiet classmates. Any teacher who wants to be more engaged in teaching, more excited about teaching, and I have to say, wants to improve their own morale, sign up for I4 coaching. It is the best thing that the district has done for me as an individual teacher during my entire career. So I strongly recommend it.
I want to take an opportunity to thank all of those that took time out of their schedule to be able to provide you examples of what they experienced throughout the year in our professional development under Goal 2 of our strategic plan. And we look forward to continuing a lot of this work to ensure that all of our students make 1 year's growth in 1 year's time going into the 22-23 school year. I will, if it's okay, jump into this and then perfect. They need to be muted. Hold on 1 second. I gotta share audio. Where is the setting?
End it.
We gotta unclick it.
And then re-screen share.
No, we gotta unclick.
You want to unclick it?
No. There you go.
And then share it.
Hold on 1 second. See, I'm muted.
It's just your volume is on. There.
There you go. I still hear it. Don't you? Hello? Hello? Perfect. Okay, sorry. Welcome everyone again for the second time. What we wanted to do is be able to provide you with a quick update for, again, I want to remind the Board of Education and those that are viewing, we're at about 95% of our CAS data is graded. For some reason, the California Department of Education still has not released individual school or individual student reports yet. We're still waiting on some of, whether it is a personnel power at the California Department of Education or there is a different issue, but we're still sitting about 95% completion rate. By sharing preliminary data with the Board of Education prior to our leadership conference, this will help us with starting to work with our site administration on the new metrics that we want to be able to hold our sites
accountable for going into the 22-23 school year. And so I'm going to jump right in. So ultimately, what I would like to be able to share with you is a side-by-side comparison of the 21 to 22 CASP comparison. Remember, I want to remind everyone that the 2020 CASP was different than the 21 and 22 CASP. Due to the pandemic, they had switched up the format, and we were still functioning under that same format in 22 as we were in 21, which was different than 20. Outside of that, I want to be able to release, this is public knowledge, the 22 AP scores and the 22 SAT breakdown. So I'm going to jump right in. So ultimately, I want to go ahead and show you our third grade scores. I'm going to just kind of highlight on each slide instead of being able to read through each of them. I want to draw our attention to two things. I'm going to give you two percentages of one that's nearly met and exceeded, and the one that is met and exceeded. The reason it's important to look at the nearly met is I think a lot of us in the room know that those are the students that are a few points. So it's a 7-point differentiate.
Points under met would be considered nearly met. And so those are the students that would be easily, if we worked closely with them with an intervention process or program right at the start of the 22 school year, we should be able to catch them up and be able to move them forward if they hadn't already participated in our summer school program that we were able to offer this summer from that extended learning opportunity grant that we wrote over the last 2 summers. So in third grade alone in ELA, we're sitting with nearly met or higher at 89%. And remember, I want to draw our attention to some of the contributing factors within our ELA program. We do have at least 10% of our students are English learners, and that's important to consider when we still ask our students to sit for this exam early on when they're sitting for the LPAC and then jumping into the CASP in some of those formats. And about 12% with the special education IEP that might have a reading deficit or an English processing deficit. So when we start to look at just the exceeds and mets alone, that 70% of our population in third grade met or exceeded in our state standards in ELA. In math, we are sitting at 92% is that nearly met or above. And what's different in this presentation than what we've done in years past too, I want to draw the board's attention as we put the exact number of students. So what our goal is during the leadership conference is we want to identify the nearly met this 29 students in ELA, and then they didn't meet the 16 students out of the 153 that assessed in third grade, and start to do case studies on those students to be able to take those back to the Horseman and Hawthorne staff to say, again, this is what worked really well. This is what we need to do differently. And these are the students that are in those categories. So in fourth grade in ELA, again, nearly met to exceed is 89%. And then when you look at the met and exceeded in ELA, it's 80%. So when we start to think about our metrics going into the new strategic plan, we want to be conscious of, if we are sitting at 80%, where should that new metrics be for the following school year instead of sitting there at the 80% in which our LCAP states already. When we look at our math, we're sitting at 92%, where that nearly met all the way up to the exceeded, and with the met and exceeded 74%. So again, we're focused on those. If you look in the right-hand column, that 41 students that nearly met or the 18 students that didn't meet. Those are our primary focus going into our leadership conference and a lot of our professional learning for the following school year. Fifth grade, I'm going to mention again in ELA, 91% nearly met or exceeded. When you break down to the met or exceeded, we're at 79%. For the math, 88 and 55. When we jump into sixth grade, 80 and 60 for ELA, and then for math, 79 and 43. When I get to seventh grade, 88 and 75 for ELA. For seventh grade math, 83 and 60. When I go to eighth grade, 89 for ELA, 72 for met and exceeded within the ELA. And then for math, 76 and 46. And then 11th grade, nearly met and higher, 82 for ELA. And then for math, 70% for that nearly met or exceeded. So that is our preliminary data for our CASP scores, and I can go back when there's any additional questions. But I do want to jump into one of the things that we heard through the professional learning was also around the next generation science standards. And that's something that is being tested summatively in 5th, 8th, and 12th. Again, this is a test that hasn't yet been normed. If you remember, about 2 years ago, the CASP was supposed to be normed in ELA and math, and then the pandemic, and they changed the test. So we're still working on that norming process. The same thing with the CAST, which is the science test of the CASP. And you'll see these are our scores. So in 5th grade, 8 students didn't meet, or 71 nearly met, 74 met. So you can kind of see that breakdown there within 8th grade and 12th. And then I'm going to jump into our AP scores. So these are finalized scores. And the great part is you can see the side-by-side comparison between 21 and 22. We jumped from 72% of our students that had taken our AP assessments, scored a 3 or higher, to 86%, with, in addition to going from 251 students scoring at least a 3 to 292 students scoring a 3. And partially that's part of the Board of Education encouraging and assisting us in being able to insert the AP Human Geography course at that 9th grade level. So the great part is we do not have any AP score in our district that has a mean score of under 3. So as you click through, you can see not only the number of AP assessments that were taken by us per category, you can also see the mean score for each of those. And if you recall, even just 2 years ago, we definitely had a couple of our scores that were floating around the 2 or higher 2 mark. And so we have definitely been able to work on. Some of them are not here due to the fact that we didn't have any student participate in this year. So like the Physics 1 or the Physics C, we did not have anybody participate in the 22 school year. And earlier, I actually had a question, I fielded a question from a Board of Education member around, can a student actually sit for the AP exam without actually taking the class? And we did. We had a student that took the World History Modern and got a 5. So I'm not opposed to the credit. And then the macro and microeconomics, those two were actually a ILC student. So we do have that course in the Independent Learning Center. So the students did have access to that Singleton student scored a 4 and a 5. As we kind of continue on, some of our highest is always in our world languages. You see the French at a 4, Spanish language and culture at 4.5. Our music theory, which is also new, which was offered. So thank you, Mr. Smith, with a 4.67. And a lot of our VAPA and fine arts were high performing. So that was our AP, and now I'm going to jump into our SAT. And again, we're sharing this because we want to utilize this information to be able to set our 22-23 standards and what our expectations are from all of our staff, including administration and Board of Education. You'll see our 22 SAT score breakdown. For BHHS, we had 158 test takers. I've actually shared this piece of information with you before in an Ed Services update, but it's just exciting to reshare. When we start to talk about national merit scholars, I think that that's a metric that the Board of Education is very interested in, and so is the community itself. Those are the students that we start to see where, we already have 4 students that have scored a 1,500 or above. When you start to look at 1,330 and over, those are 29. So it's about 33 opportunities for us to gain national merit. When you also start to look at certain subject areas where our students start to score really high in the 700 and above in English and 700 and above in math, we have 18 and 26. So what we start to do is we start to cross-reference those two lists. And if, say, one of the students of the 18 in English isn't on that math score, how do we get that person up if they're going to reassess in hopes that they could possibly be a national merit scholar in the future? that is what Ms. DeCottrell and Ms. Caber had alluded to in the video around professional development, is we are working on breaking down each of these individual scores and looking at the students. And we even have some teachers and some staff in the audience, and they're shaking their head that's what we do during those meeting times. I always a plug. Dustin, who likes to assess. Here is our upcoming assessment dates, just in case. I'm sliding that in on the slide. In case anybody would like to know, we have really built our effort of providing opportunities for students to be able to assess on their own campus, so they're not traveling to other schools. They don't have that test anxiety about going or interacting with staff that they do not know. So last but not least, I do want to thank everybody, Board of Education, teachers, instructional assistants, administrative, site and district, and Ed Services staff for helping these efforts move forward. Definitely to Rebecca Starkins, Sarah Caber, and Kim DeCottrell for helping create and mold that video, and all the teachers that were involved, for sure. And I will stop sharing, or I'll leave it sharing just in case there's any questions.
Make one comment that I saw during the video, and that is a goal for professional development and education services to diversify the instructional material and have students take more control of their own learning and kind of go beyond just textbook learning. And as a student, I just have to say that the classes and the teachers that I've had who have used that methodology have really fostered a genuine desire for intellectual curiosity. And I think that when that's kind of the environment that a teacher has in their classroom, where students are, going out and reading on their own time about politics or history or watching documentaries about it, that fosters the, genuine passion for it and can, lead to, the scores, going up and improvement wherever it can. That's all.
Thank you.
That was an amazing presentation on the professional development. I have to tell you, I have notes all over my paper. I wouldn't know where to begin, but I would like to make a few comments because it shows how much we are interested in the learning of our staff and how they can improve and so on. And I can tell you that what it pointed out is that the evaluation of a teacher should not be stressful, but that it can help them become better teachers. And I think that that's something that pointed out by one of the speakers, how everything was geared to making them better. And even though they may have been a good teacher already, they really are ready to learn and look at themselves. I particularly like the one thing that Marla Weiss said about running a camera on herself and watching her teach so that she could see how she could teach better with some evaluation from Ms. DeCottrell. I thought that was a very clever thing. Just the myriad of ways that you are doing professional development, the way that the teachers are improving their lessons, improving their growth, and I know that it's tied to 1 year's growth in 1 year's time, but the trouble is that the teacher has to improve to be able. The student gets to do that, but you have to be as the teacher to improve, and that's the thing that you really have to work on. I particularly want to again credit us on the National Board Certification Program. I really hope that we continue to get more people involved in that. I think we got up to 6 or 7 last year that were in the. How many is it now?
No, we started off with 32 and we're still sitting with about 26. So we'll find out for all of them that went through the process. We'll find out this summer, if not early fall. We were hoping to find out, and be able to celebrate them earlier, but we're waiting back. They had to do some writing samples and submit their videos. This was a component 1 and 2. But so hopefully we get all 26 across the finish line. And then we hope to recruit more for the fall to start a second cohort, again, to be able to take them through a 2-year journey of professional development. And I want to thank those that went on the journey with us for National Board, because it was a lot of work for them. And our instructional coach too, Dr. Michael Sherman, partnering with Stanford and our ed services staff. It's been a great experience.
And the new approach at Beverly Vista, the claim evidence reasoning that's going to be carried out in all the classes, that reminded me a little bit of the scientific method.
Yes.
I was really impressed with the way that they sort of narrowed it down so that you can remember the steps a little bit easier just by an acronym of CER. So I really thought that was and I really like that approach, and it's going to be carried out in all the classes, science, English, social studies, and all of them. And I also, so as far as I'm concerned, this presentation on the professional development strategic plan was outstanding. And if you were to evaluate the progress of what we're doing, you'd have to give it an check plus, plus. I really am impressed with it. I would like to reserve my comments for the second part because I'd like my colleagues to have a chance to speak on it first before I go to the testing.
Yeah, I was going to make a suggestion that maybe we should bifurcate our comments, and maybe I'll do our comments on the professional development piece first, and then go through the test results, because I'm sure we all want to talk about that. On the professional development piece, couldn't agree more. Thank you for highlighting all of the work that we're doing. I look at them as like the necessary investments. Like if we want top academic programming, if we want academic excellence, if we want to be not only viewed as, but actually be the top performing public school in California, there's no way to do that without investing in our teachers. We have great teachers. I was delighted to see Ms. Goller, Ms. Weiss, Mr. Van Rossum, a bunch of my teachers, still at the school district, still vibrant, still, holding the bar very high for our students. And, they were great teachers then, and just hearing about how they're, with open arms, continuing to embrace feedback and, invest in themselves as but teachers. And I said it earlier to Dr. Brady that I was, applauding him and his administration for being open to, a new kind of style of strategic plan and new metrics. And, that's a sign of great leadership. And this is a sign of great teachers, that they're willing to embrace this kind of stuff. So, but Dustin, thank you for your leadership in that but respect as well. It's really great to see, and we should all be very proud as a school district for the way that we're investing in professional development.
Thank you. If you'll enjoy, I might be disappearing at about 7:30, so if I may go into the test score part of this to my colleague's mind, because I do want to get this out. I have a couple of comments. Thank you, Dustin. We have this practice of kind of lumping the nearly met up with the met and exceeded. I don't think we should do that, because it kind of it's like a false positive, right? I went through and I had, before you spoke, I had deducted that nearly met portion, and I saw that overall our elementary schools are relatively strong with their results. Yep. And I think which is interesting, because this is early on in the testing, right? So the students aren't as used to the tests as they get as they age. Fifth grade math has some room for improvement, obviously, but if we think about capturing 100% of those nearly mets, we can set very lofty goals, right? If we go by just taking that out and look at met or exceeded, then we have to kind of, I think, tailor the goals per grade level, either math or ELA. I think that's as we work on the metrics for the strategic plan. I think that's something as the cabinet would have to really discuss. But what my area of concern really here was 6 through 12, mostly middle school because 11th grade, but not very strong performances in 6 through 12, not where we want to be. So is the drop-off related to the pandemic? Is this a kind of a ripple effect of what's gone on with their education? And once again, not having had the chance, they mentioned down there, of starting a normal school year and seeing how it goes this year. But the kind of red flags went up all over the place looking at those percentages in the middle school. So we created this very robust, dedicated middle school. Are we taking advantage of it, right? Academically, are we taking advantage of it? There's seventh grade seems to be operating a little better than sixth and eighth. What are the reasons? I mean, this will take you're not going to answer these tonight, but for me as a board member, I want to see these addressed. I want to see these the weaknesses addressed sooner than later, because we don't want another year of school to go by without really addressing the issues that are keeping our students from achieving what they could be achieving. And obviously you don't have individual data, so you're not able to break it out by either school or class or whatever. I understand that part of it.
Well, we will.
Yeah, we will, and we have to do it fast and furious, because there's when you have these red flags with less than 50% met or exceeded in subject matters, that's we got a problem, okay? And I love the sunshine and rainbows about all this, but we really have a problem, and we need to get on this. AP scores, very encouraging to see that, the results of the AP scores. Was the Physics C mechanics score, as you said, there were no mean scores under 3, and that was a 1.97. I didn't know if that was a typo or that was just the outlier.
It's a typo.
It is.
It is a typo.
Okay.
So I apologize. We have none
Good.
under 30.
That's why I wanted to bring attention to it.
Yes.
So was it a 3.97?
It should be a 3.97.
Awesome. That's even
And so
better.
I
It's
will
almost a
update it
4.
actually on the slide now.
I think the thing I would want to point out about the AP scores is that's my heavenly voice, everybody.
What's that?
That was my heavenly voice. Is that even with less exams taken, our percentage increased, and that's something to note as well. It's easier when your percentage increase if more exams are taken and more students, but we had less, and our numbers still went up. So I really, really appreciate the pendulum starting to swing in that area. So I will go back and let my colleagues opine on that. Thank you all for letting me give my 2 cents at the moment.
And if it's okay, can I just mention something to Vice President Margot? The AP2, we also, when we were coming out of the pandemic, we also definitely felt a fright slightly of students that were more hesitant about going into some of our honors and AP courses directly out of home learning. So even from this last year going into this year, just within our master scheduling, and I see Kim on the screen, but we see more robust classes within our AP and honors back. So this year built some of that confidence back for some of those students and those families that they're willing and ready to kind of go back on to that train with us. So that's exciting to see too. So you'll see a change in those numbers the next time I come back up.
So earlier in the strategic plan, or when we were talking about the 6,000s, I keep on getting on this horse about that middle layer should not be the mark for us. We really need to push that up, because you want to talk about moving those nearly met up. That's how we have to do it, right? We have to capture that audience and really focus on them and not let them slip through the cracks, and demand better from all stakeholders, right? Parents, teachers, students, administrators, in their success specifically. And if that's where we can make the biggest difference in the next go around on this, then that's something that simplifies the direction for the task, right? So this year, here's where our focus are going to be, because the ones that are going to meet and are going to meet it or exceed it are most likely going to do it again. I don't think I don't think you have drop off in that. I think what you have the drop off is that nearly met or fails to meet. That's the ones that we lose, and then it gets worse and worse, as we could see by the middle school to high school scores. It's getting worse and worse. So we have to get that foundation stronger, and we have to kind of in our heads say, we don't want a C student, We're going to do the best we can to eradicate that in our district through the support and understanding of where meeting the child where they're at and getting them to excel further than they would have expected. Right. So, all right. Thank you.
Thank you. With regard to the professional development, I think it's really fantastic to see all the different programs. I wanted to ask you if the teacher induction program, is that a program that's always been going on in the same way?
It has been in our district for many years. So within the state of California, a teacher has 2 years from hire right out of college to clear their credential. Through that process, it used to be called BHUSD, Beginning Teacher Support or something, and now it's California Teacher Induction Program. But ours, we've been able to work with Culver City. We're in a consortium, and we've kind of put it on steroids. So we definitely meet consistently. Even I'm going to use Ms. DeCottrell at the high school. She even creates and brings in her new teachers outside of what's happening with the California Teacher Induction Program to add additional support at the site level. So it's not only happening at the site level, it's happening at the district level with ed services staff, but then also site administration. And then in addition, they have mentors. So we've kind of like really jacked up the program a little bit. So it's exciting.
And how long have you been doing that since you've plussed it up, so to speak?
Yeah, so probably within the last 4 years, and definitely over the last year with being able to bring on a district instructional coach that can dedicate his time from going in, videotaping some of the classrooms with the teachers, providing feedback, working with site administration like Principal Caber, and teaming on creating great SMART goals for their evaluation process. So we've really seen a great outcome from that investment from the board.
I think it's really fantastic to see. I think another thing that I think I picked up on, and I'd like to hear from you, your opinion on it, but the use of the I-4 coaches and the collaborative work that was being done in the PLCs, it seems like there's been some positive effect of having had COVID. When you talk about the teachers using that and having that actually be a benefit for them and as better tools for teaching. And I'm curious what positive effects that you've seen from the last 2 years on the professional development side of things.
Yeah, so I think ultimately when we first moved into home learning, we had to literally provide as much professional learning as we possibly could to get as many teachers up to speed to really deliver instruction while everyone was at home. And through that process, I think just the collaboration, the sharing, the openness, teaching used to be very siloed for many years where teachers were really just in their classroom delivering instruction to their students, and sometimes would collaborate maybe within the cafeteria or before or after work. And I think through the pandemic, it really brought some of those teachers that may have stayed in their classroom out of those classrooms and rely on their colleagues. And so once we were able to create that environment of really learning, because out of the need to learn, it's now carried over into us returning back. And so where we spent the majority of our time training on technology, we now over the last year have been able to start really getting back to focusing on the instruction piece, because we now own the technology, if that makes sense. We're not now introducing anybody to technology anymore. All of our teachers are really competent, comfortable, and they own that arena. And now we've moved more into the coaching piece of, now that you can do all these things, now what does that translate into the classroom? What does that implementation look like? Like Principal Caber had stated, part of it is look at the data, be able to analyze it, create, and then implement. And so we're some spaces in the implementation process.
Right. It seems like there's more strategy coming out of it now
than
before. And I think that's really exciting to continue to build on as you move into this next year with the professional development, but working together with the different teams and how they're collaborating more and strategizing for what's happening in the classroom.
Yeah.
I will add something about testing. I fully agree with Vice President Margot that finding the root of the kind of the testing issue at the middle school is imperative, and whether that's because of reconfiguration, the pandemic, it's vital that we figure out why that happened, because the thing is that these exams feed into one another, and to my knowledge, the scores on the CASPs at the middle school do affect placement in the high school, and so that's affecting honors placement, that's then affecting AP placement, and So if we want those scores also to go up, then that's also a factor. But it is great to see the amazing AP scores. So that's all.
Thank you, Alex. You picked up on something that I've really been very, very, having been in this position, having, I did turn it on, having taught sixth grade, one of my biggest issues has been, and I'm going to take exception, Dustin, with the fact that you talk about the nearly met figures. They're maybe a little bit low. There's also the other end of that they're not nearly met. That's a much lower too. Mm-hmm. So we're not looking at the scores there. I personally, for me, being the type of teacher I am and what I want from my students, I'm always looking for more in the met and exceeded than I am in the nearly mets are way too high for me, period, as far as a teacher. Mm-hmm. But what bothered me, and I've been saying this every year, and that is that somewhere in our math program in the elementary, and I'm being very honest, we have students that are in fourth grade that are doing really well. They come out of third grade. We have a fairly good scores in the fourth grade of a 74% in math. Or they were 72% in fourth grade, and then they would go to fifth grade, or the fourth grade they go to from 74%, and in fifth grade they were in 70%, and all of a sudden out of somewhere, out of I don't know where, the scores from fifth grade to sixth grade drop drastically, and I don't understand that. I don't know where we're missing the boat. I don't know what we're doing. But I have been on that when I taught sixth grade math, and I realized when I got the sixth graders that they weren't ready for sixth grade. And that was, to me, I've said that all along. I've never hidden that fact. And I'm going to tell you, I worked my tail off with those sixth graders to get them ready for seventh grade. And I didn't have any of the upper kids. I had the honors kids were in another class. So I had all of those kids. So
but
there's
you do bring up
a
good point, though, and that's why we keep stressing the importance of, and we'll be bringing that to the Board of Education, just around the resources that we're leveraging and utilizing to be able to build those foundational skills in mathematics. We started to tip our toe into it.
I will go into the classroom and help them because something's got to be done. I will volunteer my time because it's very important to me. As I said, and it's been said, Alex, you said it very nicely. Pandemic configuration, I don't blame it on the configuration. There's something that's coming before that, and so I'm very strong on that. And I'm not happy with the nearly met scores that I'm seeing. And then, of course, what is beyond belief to me is the 11th grade math scores were 48% of the kids are in met or exceeded. And we're talking about excellence in education in our department. And that, to me, is not excellence. And I'm going to be very honest. I'm not as concerned about the ELA scores. I think we hold our own in those. They could be better, but they are good. But I am really off the chart in the math scores. And I did have that question about the 1% or one number on the average on that. You've clarified that. I'm impressed with the AP scores. It amazes me that we've got these AP scores, and yet we've got these kids taking math that can't do math.
Well, in not making excuses, and Alex will know this, is the high school itself, in district-wide, we tried to really gear up and engage the students in this testing process. 11th grade's hard, and I'm not making any excuses for the students, but, we're focused on a lot of the students are now for the first time taking multiple advanced placement tests, in addition taking the SAT and ACT that year. And then we're trying to engage them into sitting for an additional test. And so what we need to do is to take those nearly or even those met students and cross-reference those students' scores to the ACT, SAT, and APs that we have on them. And is this true data that represents us as a district? Are the students really going in full-fledged? Because you look at our AP Calc AB scores, and we have all these students sitting over here scoring high, but this doesn't prove that, right? So there's a disconnect. And then our SAT scores, you'll see We have so many students that are almost nearing a perfect score on the math section of the ACT, but why isn't that translating into the CAS? So if we have to start giving away prizes, people, to the I'm just kidding. Like, we got to think of some carrots to dangle for those students, because it's a hard year for the 11th grade class. Is it test like exhaustion? Again, because the when you triangulate the data, it doesn't match up.
No, those kids may not care quite as much because they've just gone through the the SATs or the AP exams, and those are the ones that really they're more worried about. So that might be a reason, but that just is something that I'd like to see us address.
And another conversation that high school administration has brought up too, and that I'm going to highlight one area too, is the science in 12th grade. Most of our students, not most, but a lot of them, if they're not pursuing the pathway within, say, a medical field, or do not take a 4th year science, they're being tested in April of their senior year on an assessment that they haven't had instruction on for almost 8 months. So high school administration brought it to our attention about trying to find a different solution of possibly testing our 10th grade students. And so, I think that's a great idea that they brought to district administration as an opportunity to try to maybe see, while the kids are in chemistry, biology, possibly physics, that then they are assessed during that time versus having that gap in there.
Well, then remember now that the general science, the new class, the NGSS, is broad.
Yep.
And the test is going to be broad. A lot of kids who are in just biology may have not had chemistry. They may not have had too much physics and so on, and it's all thrown into that one exam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we feel that at least having a year and a half instruction under their belt without a gap, they may score a little bit higher. So it's something that we're just willing to possibly talk with you guys too around trying to do something different to see if we'll have a different outcome. Because, what is it? If you consistently do the same thing with the same outcome, you're the crazy one kind of thing. So we're trying to mix it up, find a different solution.
Kudos on the professional development, though. That was superior.
Thank you.
I share a lot of the concerns and observations that my colleagues already shared, specifically with the math scores. So I think the way that we're reviewing the data is also really important. So I just want to make sure that I understand, if we're looking at 4th grade math, for example, the first column, so I'm looking at page 4. I just wanted to clarify. So we're looking at the 3rd graders that took it the year before, how they scored in the 3rd grade test versus how those same students or same class then scored as a 4th grade class, right? So we're kind of tracking that class's progress, right? Okay.
Yep. So you'll see in 4th grade from a 3rd grader that we've actually increased their performance. So they, as 3rd graders, they were only scoring 36 exceeded, and now we're at 43% exceeded. And again, from the MET, 36 to 31, but overall, we decreased the nearly met by 2. The didn't meet maintained the same. So we're kind of trying to pick it off at that pot of that nearly met to get them up into that met or exceeded through, our PLCs, data chats, kind of evaluating those middle band students, because those are the easy ones to be able to push up over.
Hey, look, I know that there's some larger macro trends at play here. I know that we're not the only school district that's having these kind of challenges across California or the nation. That stated, we want to be the top public school in California. Okay. So I think we need to compare ourselves to how the rest of the top public schools in California are performing. From what I see here, I like that we're tracking the data the same class from 4th grade to 5th grade. I'm now looking at page 5. Mm-hmm. But even there, from what I'm seeing, we had 40% exceeding, and then the following year, only 30% are exceeding.
It's kind of what Mrs. Marcus was just stating.
Yeah.
It's that grade band.
and that year over year trend continues. I do also want to echo that I agree with my colleagues that we really should be looking at the exceeded and met. The nearly met, to me, that's not nearly good enough, no pun intended. I really think we should be looking at which of our students are actually meeting the mark, and try to keep trying to push as many as we can into that kind of top tier. But I want to suggest that I think the other way that we should be looking at this data is just, to fifth grade, for example, in, year 2021, and then fifth grade in year 2022, right? Like, I think we need to be looking at the data both ways, because are we really improving the instruction in that year over year results in that grade? And so what I would ask is if we could even review this same data at some future point, looking at fifth grade, for 3 consecutive years, looking at sixth grade for 3 consecutive years. So not tracking that class of students, but actually how we're doing in terms of sixth grade performance year over year, if that makes sense.
Totally. And that's what we do internally too, just to kind of overshare is, again, we always kind of triangulate the data. It's not an isolation of we are only tracking the cohort. So the principals definitely pick apart and pull each cohort, even within the class, like how did that specific teacher do over the last 2 years versus, versus just this cohort passing through, has she or he increased or decreased with scores? Then what happened within that, who was in that classroom, the students themselves. So we're even, looking multiple years in sequence within even just the classrooms, or even programs.
Because I think what we should see when we think about the results of COVID, or we think about what kind of impact, the reconfiguration had. What I would imagine that we should be seeing, especially in next year's results, is that we should be seeing a positive swing if we're looking at year over year for the grade, right? Like we should start seeing a much stronger fifth grade class, sixth grade class, seventh grade class, et cetera, coming out of those years. So I think it's important we look at the data that way. Like the way that I was crunching it, the later grades are having a slightly more significant drop off in the exceeded or met. Like I think in the sixth grade, the quick numbers I was crunching, it was down 4% if you add the exceeded and the met category. Then by seventh grade, it was 8%. By eighth grade, it was 9%. And it just kept going like that. So I think this is an area of big opportunity for us to address. Again, I know we're not alone in the state, but if we want to be the top performing school, we really have to hold ourselves accountable on the areas that we see that we can improve. And also that was just a comment on the SAT scores as well. The SAT scores, again, generally look good. I'm looking at page 16. If we compare ourselves to all the test takers in the state, sure, I would expect that we would be performing higher than the state average, right? But I think what I would like to see is this school district hold ourselves accountable and comparing ourselves to who we really compare ourselves to. And that's the other top performing public schools in the state, right? Like that's where I would be very interested to see, how we're doing, whoever those schools are. Like, I'd like to hear from the administration who we think those schools are. Like, who do we look up to, not look up to, but who do we kind of compare ourselves to in our, as a comparable public school.
And we can bring that to the board. We typically do this presentation in September, but just with us going into leadership conference, I typically wouldn't even share this until then, when one, the scores are finalized, but then two, we would have that cross-reference. So we typically would bring like a Manhattan Beach, a Palo Alto, La Cañada comparison to us too, just to be able to see, is this unique different to us, or is this again across Southern California, also Northern California? So we will bring that back to you in September, where you can see clearly this is how they did in each of the grade bands once that's no longer embargoed by the state.
To thank you, Dustin, for bringing us these numbers, continuing to have this conversation. I agree with you. I think it's really important for us to be looking at this as we're going into our planning. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to let Dr. Stern, are you ready for comment? Okay.
Yes, Dustin, thank you. First, I want to say that I am really glad that the teachers undertook such an extensive opportunity for learning and self-growth and self-appraisal, because at the end of the day, we are role models for our students, that we as adults are also learners. And I think hearing the passion of all of those educators was really inspiring. I could tell that they enjoyed it and they all benefited from it. One of the most horrific myths that I've heard in my time as an educator is comments that people have made in general. Oh, teachers, they're babysitters, or things like that, which nothing could be further from the truth. I know that in my years teaching at 6th grade, many, many years ago, it was a craft that I definitely cared for. I saw how much intelligence and expertise and planning goes into it. And all of the professional development that the educators on your video shared really highlighted to me just how much teachers can love and succeed their career, but also being role models for learning. Speaking about some of the test scores, I want to make sure that it's clear that for the 6th and 7th graders whose math scores dropped rather precipitously, if I'm not mistaken, during their 4th and 5th grade years, that's when it was that year where it was partially at home. And I think, most of us are of a consensus that the learning, especially for subjects that are generally more difficult nationally to teach, such as math, I think that the impact of the home learning experiment, if you will, cannot be underestimated in terms of the adverse impact it very likely had on these preteens who, for their 4th and 5th grade years, were trying to learn math, which eludes many of us, and so that their 6th and 7th grade performance on these CASP tests were not what we are looking for. So I just think that is something to consider. We certainly want to raise the bar, but I can definitely see how there was an adverse impact on math. And then to tie this back together with some of the individuals who are telling us about the disabilities, I want to say that the pandemic, if we thought the pandemic was difficult for all of us who don't at this point have disabilities, can you imagine those students and those adults whom we listen to going through their daily activities and their learning with a pandemic in their world? And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Dustin, so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Stern. I agree with what my colleagues are saying. I think it will be interesting to see the data looked at in some different ways, and as well to look at, like, when you talk about 11th grade, I can understand there's test burnout from a standardized testing standpoint. They're taking a lot of tests that are, everything is riding on. And I can imagine showing up for this day on this test going, I'm going to sleep through this test because it does matter. So I think there's got to be some strategies about getting better data that shows us what that, what the learning is there. So I think that's really important to us. I'd like to see it, like Gabe said, by grade, year over year, just so that we can see that and look at the schools that some of those other schools that we're comparing ourselves to, because I think I don't want to just set a goal in a vacuum, but I do think that we need to reach high, because that's what we want to aspire to that. So then the question is where do we put the support, especially in the middle school and in the foundational years for math, and even what Mandy said, recognizing that there was a challenge during those years, that we may need to go back and look at those grades again and look at those students again and see what that testing looks like and what their comprehension really is, their mastery really is, because we may need to put more support there to invest in their performance down the road. And if that, we want to get there, we're going to have to really look at that investment there as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing the strategies that come back from your teams about how we can address some of these things. But I think we all want to see better. I think we know we can do better, and I think we have the resources to do that. And I think with the professional development and the collaboration and a sense of really It's not a got you or a, trying to make teachers feel fearful. It's about all of us being on the same team and seeing how high we can rise and what we can really do. And I'm excited about that. So I'm disappointed in these middle school math scores, definitely in the lower grades, but I'm sure there's a lot to it. But I definitely think we can do better, and I really expect that from all of us.
Thank you.
Nothing else? All right. I just would also like to say thank you for sharing this information. I'd like to thank the teachers for all the work that they've done and the professional development and their commitment to our students and to our families, because I think it's just, I appreciate it so much. I know how hard that these past years have been. And when we see this for the professional development and we think about the last 2 years and some of the things that we saw in the boardroom and the negotiations with the MOU and how contentious things got, and then we see this for professional development, I think we have to acknowledge the commitment that we saw and the commitment that we're seeing here, and that truly that we are all here for the same reason. We care about our kids, we care about educating our kids, and this is the proof that we're seeing, and I think we should acknowledge that. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is it's meeting reports. Do we have any board meeting? Mrs. Marcus does. Go ahead, Mrs. Marcus.
I just want to share that I went to the Health and Safety Commission meeting yesterday, and as you know, I enjoy going to those. And yesterday I decided that they should meet Mr. Mead, our new Director of Security, School Security, so I took Mark with me, and he made a presentation to them, and they really enjoyed it. They really grilled him afterwards, lots of questions, and I thought it was very important. As a matter of fact, I am going to take Alex to the next meeting and let her meet the, I think that's a little bit of letting them see what's going on, so I'm asked Alex to join me at the next meeting and make an introduction of her to the Health and Safety Commission. One of the things that then after the meeting, I stayed to watch a little bit of it, and the police captain that was there, I can't remember his name, but he was talking about the real-time watch center, which gives them information in actual time, and how that has really been helpful in apprehending criminals and what have you. And also, he mentioned the cooperation now with the Beverly Hills Unified School District and the police department, and how much that has improved. And I wanted to mention that tonight, that was commented at the Health and Safety Commission. And also, I would like to comment on the fact that I don't think many people know this, but the city pays for the crossing guards that we have during the school year, and even sometimes during the summer where we need them. The city pays for half of those crossing guards. That's a 50-50 situation, and it's not cheap. It is very expensive considering the number of crossing guards we have. So I would like to just mention that, to thank the city for the money that they give us for that. And also, I'm looking forward to National Night Out, and I hope that I'll see a lot of people there, and that's this coming Tuesday night at 6 o'clock. And that pretty wraps up what I had to say. The only meetings that I was, other than the fact that I was out of town.
Thank you.
I don't have any meeting reports, but I did have a question about meeting reports. Do we or have we assigned a liaison from our board to the BHEF? And should we have one?
We do not have one. I don't think that in any district that I've been at that we assign somebody to that. Certainly it's open to anyone, but I've never been part of an organization where they'll assign somebody to the foundation.
It just occurred to me that the working relationship between those is really important. For having meeting reports about, we have our city representatives, we have our committee representatives.
Yeah. Right.
We should consider having one for the BHF.
I think that's a good idea, actually.
So maybe we should take that up at a future time. I was planning on going anyways, but it just occurred to me whether we have one or not.
Right.
So
I think that's a great idea.
Sure.
So we'll put it
I'll
on
step in.
our next
Yeah,
one.
let's do that.
Dr. Stern? Yeah.
Yes, hi. I was just going to report briefly on the Human Relations Commission. I wanted, of course, to speak sadly how Rhoda Sharp has passed away. She was the chair of the HRC. Although I never met her in person, I very much enjoyed speaking to her and her very relevant questions that she asked of us, of the school board. She also had spoken about the engagement project, which was something that was near and dear to her heart. I know that Dr. Brady and some of the members of the cabinet in January and in April went and heard more about that. So I just wanted to put that out there, that is something that the school board was approached with, and is something we should think about. If I understand it correctly, Ms. Sharp's goal with the engagement project was to spread an anti-hate message throughout the school, which is no easy feat. Another item of HRC is there is something called the Embrace Civility Award, which is anyone can nominate someone as long as it's a community member who lives in Beverly Hills. And this is an award that I believe will be awarded in October. The deadline to submit or not someone is August 15th. And it is for someone who we feel demonstrates positive aspects in all aspects of relationships in the community. And let's see. So those are the two things I wanted to mention. And again, I'm glad that we had a moment of silence for Rhoda Sharp.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mrs. Marcus?
I would just like to make one more comment on Rhoda Sharp, because I worked with her in 1979 at the high school. I was part of the ROP. That was the 1 year that I can claim that I taught at the high school. And she was an amazing woman, but recently she came to me, and the one word that, and carrying on, and which reminded me of what Mandy just said, she was trying to develop, and I came to you with it, Dr. Brady, and we never got it off the ground. We must get it off the ground now. This little thing called kindness matters, where you don't spread hate and so on, and that was her word, kindness matters, and I think we got to do something about that now, in her memory.
Thank you. I didn't attend any meetings this past week, I'm happy to say. We had board meetings, we had planning session meetings, we had study sessions, but no other meetings outside of that. So I have nothing to report on that note. I did want to add one other thing, though, about Dustin and the performance numbers, the testing. As we look forward, I think another really important piece that we have to consider is parent engagement with regard to that, and what that piece is about, how we bring the parents in to this process, and what are we aspiring to do, and what are the goals, and what we're trying to achieve, and have them be a partner with the teachers and with the schools and their child's education, so that we can help bring these numbers up to where we want to be, which is the best school in the state of California, best school district. And that's all I have to say. Thanks.
President Wells, can I make a motion for the approval of amendment with NASDAQ International for Armed Security Agent Services?
The motion was made by Mr. Halimi and seconded by Mrs. Marcus, and I will invite Raphael up so he can introduce.
All right. Well, good evening, Board President Wells, board members, Dr. Brady, our cabinet, community. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present this quick item and talk about the rationale here. So, approval of amendment with NASDAQ International for Armed Security Agent Services. So on March 3rd, 2021, the district entered into a amended contract with NASDAQ International for Armed Security Agent Services. As the district takes over operational management of the new Security Command Center, the new organizational structure requires one additional NASDAQ employee. So the recommendation is that the staff recommends approval of this amendment to the NASTIC contract. The financial impact funding is going to be from the district's general fund, and the annual cost is projected to be around $75,396, and the supporting documentation was attached to the item. Thank you.
I think I should call for her. We didn't vote to.
We didn't. We have discussion on it, right? Do you have any discussion on it? Okay, I have a question. And this has to do with this position is a position that is going to be in the command center, correct? It's a person that's going to be in the command center it's the second person. We hired the first person we've hired. This is through NASTIC, that's what this is all about. And I have a concern at the bottom of that. Let me just quickly get that there. It says, the total amount is $75,396, and that's okay. I don't mind that. But this person is going to be sitting in the command center, and it says total including a supervisory vehicle. And I don't understand why a man who's sitting in the command center, we're paying for a vehicle. And I'm not sure, and I totaled up all the hours and so on, and yes, it comes to that figure. So I'm wondering, is there a something inside of this, the salary of $51.50 per hour that's being used for vehicle? Because I don't understand that. So I'm having a little difficulty with approving that amendment tonight with that, unless you can explain it to me. I don't know where the vehicle comes in.
Well, I don't know if you want to jump into this. I was talking to Mr. Roach about this earlier. So there is some accessibility that the person that NASTEC will need. So if they need to go to one of the schools, they need to be able to get there. So they've always had a vehicle. This is just for the accessibility to get to our schools.
But don't we already have that in our contract with the supervisor that we already have a supervisor in place that that's in the contract. So wouldn't that be the supervisor that's driving?
This is not part. I don't think it was part of the last one. Is that correct? Yeah. So
we had a supervisor. Did they just not have a vehicle?
Yeah, I don't think the vehicle was included at all.
Because we had the guards. I mean, I remember on the original contract it had the guards at each of the sites, and then we had a supervisor and a fee that was attached to that. So if we're adding another person that's only in the command center, I agree. I question that we need to have. I'm questioning about having a supervisor vehicle when we already have supervisor in our contract. It's not attached to this. This is just the amendment. And I had the same question as Rochelle about what's the cost, because I added it up too. That 51. Each of the weekly costs that's listed there, it looks like it's for their weekly salary. So when I add that up, it comes out to this number, but it doesn't delineate what the cost is for the supervisor vehicle. So I'd like to know what that is, because it says included.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what that is. If you do.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure, or I don't know if wait if you wanted to come. Thank you.
Since this is your last meeting,
yeah.
Because I know that since there's some mobility from school to school as well, so I'm sure that's also part of how they get from each school.
Right. The original contract that we currently have for the current security guards has a supervisor car and a supervisor. That is kind of a floater, actually, that supervises and floats between sites.
Right.
So adding this other person, they won't be able to share the car because they have a different time slot. So this person needs to have a vehicle to be able to get to another site in case he needs to do that or she needs to do that. So it's kind of two different assignments, if you will, and I think it's $500 a week is the breakdown.
So it's not in the contract because it's the $75,396 plus $500 a week times the number of weeks then, because it says included, but it's not included then. Unless I missed that.
Well, the numbers for the cost might be the all-in cost.
Yes,
and
it
that
is
might be
included
broken
in that
into
cost. It says
to the billing rate.
Total including supervisor vehicle, so it is in the cost. How it's broken down in the $51, I'm not sure.
So it's part of the
Yeah.
$51?
Right.
Okay, got it.
I'm asking what's in the 5150 per hour, because obviously that's where it's hidden, because the numbers match what we're
Right.
paying
Yeah,
for
it
it.
adds up to the
But
7.
I also felt that I knew we had a NASTEC officer, the supervisor, that went to give relief to the places that used to go around, and he had a car.
Yes.
And so this one, a person sitting, I figure he's going to be sitting in there. He's not going to be going
He
elsewhere.
needs to look at those screens.
That's the only thing that I wondered. So if he's going to be traveling around, it doesn't say that.
Right, I think it's just for the flexibility for that type of position. It's something, this is first year, remember, as a pilot.
Mhm.
So we're going to pilot this contract to see if it works for us. So if it doesn't
Right.
work after the first year, then we can adjust it.
On the other part of the contract, because I don't have it in front of me, if you remember, did the supervisor hourly rate include the vehicle? I thought it was a separate line item.
You know, I don't have it in front of me. I know the supervisors make a little bit more money than the regular traditional NASDAQ security.
Right. I think it was more akin to this.
I think so.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was my question. So it's included. It really is included.
Yes. Thank you.
So the question is, do we want to leave it as it is and take it at that? Or do we want to ask that question and come back to this? Do we need it immediately?
Because this is a pilot, I would suggest we leave it as it is and just ask our chief business officer to just keep an eye on this and see if we're actually. I wasn't looking at you. You didn't need to point at him. I know who he is.
Yes, definitely.
I would just ask us to keep an eye on this and just let's just see how much we're actually using this vehicle and if it's really necessary. And then when either we can ask to amend it later, or when the contract comes up for renewal, we can address it then. But it looks like the training day is on the 29th, which is in 3 days. So
we want to get them on board.
Yeah, I want to get them on board.
Dr. Stern, do you have any comments?
Much with Gabe. I think that we should move forward and keeping an eye and monitoring it. Our new business manager, I think that's a great idea. Thank you.
I agree. I think it's worth trying it and having you monitor it. Does anybody else have any other questions before I call for the vote?
With the caveat that we're going to watch it.
We will make sure to keep track of this.
We will, and I also want to point out. I also want to point out too that this is a position that the police department uses too in their command center. So there has been some discussion about sharing and having people that are involved at the city level and also with the school level, so that people are starting to get to know our schools. So we're also looking at that partnership and that mobility between the police department command center and our command center.
I think that's a really good point. This really is about the synergy that is forming with the city, and I think there's going to be a lot of efficiencies that are going to come in the bigger picture from doing that as well. All right, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0, and with the preferential vote from Alex Bowden. And I'd like to welcome you, Raphael. We didn't get a chance now that you've been standing up here, so welcome to your first time at the podium, and we're really happy to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will call for the
The Wade
approval.
looks a bit too happy about this.
He's smiling. He's already got he's out in the sun. I would like to move for the approval of the resolution 2022-2023-01, continuing authority to hold virtual meetings pursuant to AB 361.
I'll second.
Any comment? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0 with a preferential vote from Alex Bowden. And next we have public comment. And I'd like to thank everybody that's here for public comment for being so patient and waiting. I think first, Shiva. Typically we would have a card, but we don't have cards. But all right. So, they're by the front door. All right. So, Shiva, before you start, I'm just going to welcome you and also remind you that you have 3 minutes. So please do me a favor and be mindful of your time, because I hate cutting people off.
Okay, sounds good.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you for having me here. I just want to make sure that we don't go back to masks. And I'm going to tell you my personal experience, because I have a child that goes to Beverly Vista, and she got D's and F's during the time where they're masking her. She's got allergies like I do, so she's coming home coughing, having nose runs. Probably that was a reason why she tested positive, because that's what happens when you're collecting bacteria in your nose. You're getting high viral loads. This is from scientists. Actually, one of my best friends was a biology research professor at UCLA. He actually did a film in 2001 called Science Fraud. And he was basically talking about what's happening right now. And I do love that you guys have these programs for critical thinking. But it seems like there was not much critical thinking going on when it comes to COVID. And I'm going to tell you a couple reasons why. Number one, before 1981, it used to be illegal for Big Pharma to propagate on television and magazines. I'm sure a lot of people didn't know that. And after that, once they allowed that, no one's going to bite the hand that feeds them. And if you think about all the medication being made, where's it being made? China. So we're literally beholden to China. And that's dangerous, okay? So we have what's called MK Ultra too. I'm sure a lot of people never heard of MK Ultra or Operation Mockingbird Media, the CIA. I literally call CIA a news network, because if you look at Anderson Cooper, he used to be an intern for the CIA. If you look at Josh Campbell, I think it's Campbell, he worked for James Comey. He was his assistant. So we have the government embedded in our media. And that is why we have this big pharma, big government collaboration, and nobody's questioning. And science is about scrutiny, not Orwellian obedience. Oh, I'm following the science. Well, what science are you following? Political science? I mean, that seems like what's happening here. We got Barbara Ferrer. Her daughter is part of this mask study with schools. Neither one of them are medical doctors. And she gets paid so much money. It's ridiculous. I don't even know what the lady does, really. I don't know what she does to make all that money. But it seems like there's this nepotism, there's this corruption, and I would like to look into these people. I think they need to be audited and see if they have any connection with Big Pharma. And we need to start questioning. We need to stop just going by the mainstream media that really doesn't care about our children, really doesn't care about our communities. I mean, this has been so divisive. I just went to a city council meeting, and 2 councilmen basically gaslighted us. One wanted to equate us to flat earthers. I don't know how, I've never said anything about flat earth. So I don't know why they would equate that to me being a flat earther or the people against these mandates as flat earthers. John Marish started bringing up abortion. So I don't know what that had to do with the conversation either. So anyway, that's I guess I'm done. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Shiva. Okay, next we will hear from Shadi Baruzan. Zoom. I see. Okay, I'll go with Rebecca Shalom, and we'll come back to Shadi. I'm going to do the in-person first. Is Rebecca Shalom here? Okay, Mahal Amir Salkin.
Good evening, everybody. Barbara Ferrer has stated that she plans to reinstate the indoor mask mandate as of July 29th. If the mask mandate is imposed, BHUSD will have to make a difficult choice. The Memorandum of Understanding with BHEA requires masks to be worn, quote, to the extent required by applicable health orders. If Barbara Ferrer reinstitutes the mask mandate, presumably that would be the applicable health order and masks would be required at school. On the other hand, you have a duty to provide an effective education for your students, as well as to protect their health and well-being. Unfortunately, the negative impacts of mask wearing on children are well established. We've been living with its destructive physical, educational, and socio-emotional effects for the past 2.5 years, and multiple medical studies have validated these observations. A reasonable person can foresee that forcing our students to mask again will cause them harm. Barbara Ferrer has the political authority to impose this mandate, but there is no valid scientific research that proves masking will stop COVID. Even if wearing a mask slows the spread, statistics show that the protection gets weaker with every successive breath. So all day, everyday masking cannot protect long term. While LACDPH reports that the numbers of COVID patients and COVID deaths are exploding, they do not separate out patients whose illness is caused by COVID from patients who are hospitalized because of something else and happen to have COVID too. When data is so deeply flawed, any decision based on that data will also be flawed. Why is Los Angeles the only county that is considering reimposing a mask mandate? If it were a reasonable policy, wouldn't the California Department of Health require it of all counties with increasing COVID numbers? In medicine, when a doctor does something that he or she should have foreseen would cause harm, we call that malpractice or negligence. This mask mandate, there is no reason to expect a positive effect on COVID control and every reason to expect negative effects on our children's education and well-being. Whatever Barbara Ferrer chooses to do, please let Beverly Hills USD stick with my mask, my choice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we will hear from, do we have Lise Basman? Hi.
Hi, board.
Can you speak into the mic a little more? Thank
Sure.
You. Thank you.
My name is Liz Vaisman, and I'm
I
a mother of
apologize.
2 attending BHUSD and also a California realtor. And I would like to thank the board and all of the BHUSD administration for their effort to provide our community with great schools. However, I am very disappointed in the board's decision to approve the Grandparent Permit, as it goes against the very principle that education should be a socioeconomic elevator. If our school district has the capacity to issue school permits, a more logical process should be followed, beginning with the BHUSD families that would otherwise have to be displaced due to financial hardship and then simply via lottery. The BHUSD community that is served by this board is made up of the families that have made an effort and found a way to join it through residency and through service to the same community. It is not made up of the families that have already taken advantage of it for their own children. It sends the message that great education as a privilege should be inherited rather than earned or deserved, and our children are watching us.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Shadi Baruzan on Zoom. Shadi, are you there? No? All right, Shadi, if you are there, we'll come back to you. I'm going to move on and go to Sagali Sabag.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, before you start my time, there's another parent that wrote on a school chat if I could read her letter, and she applied for the Zoom. Her name is Lori Cavey. Do you have her?
Yes, I do. So you're going to speak 3 minutes for yourself first, and then you're going to speak 3 minutes for Lori, if I understand correctly?
Yeah, I kind of bunched it together, so I probably need just a couple more minutes. So thank you.
So that'll be 6 minutes total.
So let me know.
Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you, I'm ready. Okay, good evening, board members and Dr. Brady. Thank you all for being advocates for me tonight. Actually enjoyed being last so I could hear everything. As you all know, last night, the Beverly Hills City Council had a special study session in regards to possible reinstated mask mandates by LADPH. Thank you, President Wells, for being very proactive in attending the meeting in person. Ultimately, our Mayor Basse showed tremendous leadership and announced that Beverly Hills will not comply nor enforce any more mandates. I am here tonight to plead with each one of you, as you are all responsible in the decision-making at BHUSD. You have all made an oath to uphold the Constitution. You did not make an oath to LADPH or BHEA. Please appreciate and understand how much our community has suffered due to all the unnecessary mandates that did absolutely nothing in regards to health. As you are all also aware, I have been trying to warn the district of all the damages the mandates have caused. Parents are afraid to speak up due to being retaliated against by BHUSD staff members or even other BHUSD parents. As we all know, their fears are valid. There must be zero tolerance for any BHUSD staff member that has retaliated against a BHUSD student or their family. A parent on our chat, like I told you, she is celebrating her daughter's birthday today and could not make this meeting. It is not somebody I personally know. The following is her letter. Hello, board members. My name is Lori Kava, and I am the parent of 3 BHUSD students, ages 7, 10, and 14. I'll keep it brief. The purpose of my letter is to have on record that I, as an active, involved parent, vote against masks in school, not indoors nor outdoors. No student should be mandated to wear a mask while in learning in all forms. My 7-year-old has speech and learning disabilities that have been exacerbated due to masking in classrooms and on playgrounds. As my older children, it stands as an obstacle for children to feel engaged and connected to their instructors. There is a lack of interest in looking at the teacher while they're teaching when their entire face is covered. Therefore, I am 100% against masks. This is not a pandemic for children, and therefore they should not be bearing the weight and burden of the effects of the pandemic for adults. Furthermore, with the vaccines and medications now available, COVID is no longer threatening nearly as many lives as it did when we first were faced with it. Leave our children alone. Thank you. To that note, please do not let any BHUSD staff member get away with retaliation against our fellow BHUSD staff, students, and families. Such conduct will not be tolerated in our community, and nobody should have the privilege of being an employee with BHUSD once they have decided intentionally, consciously, premeditated, with malice, to act upon destroying someone else's life simply because they disagree with them. Kindness matters. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other public comment this evening? Yes.
Who is Yossi?
Shadi Baruzan, are you there?
Huh?
It has said connecting to audio for about 10 minutes now, so I don't know if they're here anymore, but it has said connecting to audio for about 10 minutes.
Okay. Well, I think then we will move on to board comments, and if she or he comes on, then we'll backtrack to that if we need to. Okay. I will start with Alex. No comments today? Okay. Mrs. Marcus?
I really this has been a long meeting, and I think in brevity, I would like to make a comment that unfortunately the masking situation is something that I really am worried about, and as far as the community is concerned, and I'm really listening very carefully to everybody. So I want everybody to know that it's something that I am very concerned about, and I can't make any comment on it right now, but just something that I'm very torn how it might be tearing the community apart. That's the thing, that here we are trying to come together, and we have to make a decision that is going to have an impact that I can't believe. On a little happier note, I had a chance to go someplace last weekend to a place I'd never heard of before, and when they first asked me where I was going, I said, I don't know, I'm going to Baltimore, Maryland, but it turned out I was going to Havre de Grace. Havre de Grace is a very important revolutionary community and very old, and it is where the Susquehanna and the Chesapeake Bay meet. And it was a wonderful weekend, and the only one thing wrong, it was very hot and very humid, and we should be very grateful that we don't have that here. And so with that, I'm going to thank everybody for their comments tonight, for attending, and I want to welcome Raphael to our administration. Thank everybody again for their presentations, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mrs. Marcus. I also want to welcome Alex again. We're excited to have you. Raphael, Wade, see ya. No, I'm just we'll miss you. No, we really will miss him. I can tease him because he knows that I'll miss him. I wanted to thank all of our community members that stuck around for public comment. Thank you guys for being here. As I think most of you know that spoke tonight, I staunchly stand with you. I am very, very, very frustrated by our county for continuing to make decisions that are not based on data at all, that continue to put our children on the front line and hurt them. There's just no data to support that masks will help in any way. If anything, we have seen tons of data about how it has had a detrimental impact on them. So with that said, I wanted to say how much I respect and applaud our city for taking the steps that they have taken. I think we should take similar strong action as a school district, and just continue our own policy that we have had, that it is your mask, your choice. If you feel like you need the mask to protect yourself, by all means, we stand with you. But we are no longer at a point in this pandemic or epidemic or just the reality that we just have another, but airborne disease that we need to deal with in our lives ongoing. We're just not in a point that we should be mandating these things. So with that, I would like to give some kind of direction, or at least have a conversation as soon as July 29th does pass. I kind of wish we would have done it in advance, but I would like to have a meeting to discuss, what we're going to do about any impending mask mandate as soon as that happens. I would leave that to our president and our superintendent to figure out when that is appropriate, but speaking for myself, I would like to see, if necessary, a special meeting scheduled so we can address it in a similar fashion to the way our city has. I just wanted to be very clear about that my position on this matter hasn't changed at all. It's only become more clear to me over time as we've continued to see data. And it's absolutely shocking to me that we're even having this conversation. But we're part of LA County. We are where we are. So, to thank you to everyone, thank you to my fellow board members, thank you to Dr. Brady and his administration for a great meeting that went later than I think we were all planning. But great meeting.
So my apologies, President Wells. I do have a communication. Just on a kind of more exciting note, I know I kind of jumped right into this position with my report and everything, but I know a lot of people in this room, don't know me personally, and for those watching, my place on this position is not kind of a decision that was on a whim that I applied for. Becoming student board member has been a journey of mine for the last 5 years. I have watched the last 5 student board members come and go since I was 12 years old, since I was in 7th grade. And this journey, has, my desire to, be in this position right now started when I was very young. And for the most part, almost every academic decision and, school-related decision, even out of school, has been made for me, I've made working towards this position, and this is my end goal. This is the legacy that I want to leave when I graduate the high school, and this is something that I've been working, towards for the last several years. And I've always had a passion for understanding the ins and outs of the district. I was always someone, when I was like 14 years old, I would know things about the district that my teachers didn't even know. And I would come to class and be like, did you know, blah, 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 this is happening. And they would be like, oh, really? That's so cool. And I was not probably your average 7th grader at home. My friends would get mad at me because I would spend hours every other week watching these board meetings. But that really goes to show that this is something that I've, been interested in doing and genuinely have, the knowledge of. And I'm very excited to finish it up. I'm very excited for this next year because I think every student board member that I've seen has had their own key and prevalent, issues during the school year, from the metro reconfiguration, COVID-19, and I'm excited to see what prevails in my term. And I'm also excited to see, every student board member has had their own unique way of navigating this position, and I'm very excited for that. And my report this week was not super intense, but the upcoming weeks, we have link crew and freshman orientation and a lot of things going on, so I'm excited. And yeah, that's it.
Dr. Stern, are you there?
Hi, yes. I wanted to say something again about the CAST and standardized testing, if I could. I think one issue we have is there is poor attitude around standardized testing. I think that the fact that a lot of universities and colleges no longer require the SAT or the ACT is a larger movement away from standardized testing. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, in the educational code, it actually says that schools shall not have specific activities aimed at teaching towards the test. Instead, they should have premium education as a priority so that you don't have to have these intensive study for the test type of activities. So I guess why I'm saying this is because if there is any concern about the performance of our students with the testing, we might want to consider how we communicate to both students and to parents the benefits of scoring well. Because, for example, I do know some very able testers who have opted out. I'm not sure that it is communicated effectively at this point to the children, young and old, well, 3rd grade and higher, as well as to the parent community, as to why these scores are important. They are correlated with grades. That is true. Generally speaking, there is a correlation, but that doesn't mean that there aren't students who, in fact, with other indicators are doing very well. But they either have test anxiety or they have this attitudinal problem in the back of their head that says, testing doesn't count, don't worry about it. I know there's many parents who in this era are very concerned about anxiety levels with their kids, more than ever before I've seen. So no surprise, a lot of students will say to their parents, I have testing today, and there is a great deal of parents, and I'm not saying they're wrong, but there's a great deal of parents who say, don't worry about it, please, just do your best. So I want to just communicate that there is a psychology behind the general feeling globally about standardized testing at this point that is unfavorable, and that if we want kids to have the added, have some success, we might want to consider more direct and explicit communication about why it might be important or valuable as a school district. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you everyone for staying so long. I welcome Rafael Guzman. Mr. Guzman, we're very happy to have you. Also, I'm looking at my calendar, and this is the last meeting that we will see Mr. Roach, and I think we have to acknowledge that. And thank you very much for all of your service. Thank you for seeing us through this transition. And we wish you the best in your next endeavors. Thank you very much.
It doesn't have to be his last meeting. He can come back. Public comment. Come say hi. Speak your mind, Wade.
I did go to the meeting yesterday at City Council and listen to all the public comments. There were many of our parents there that spoke, and the majority, I would say, were against masking. I think the overriding message that I heard is that, you know, the detriment to our students and just the overall hit that our student body has taken as a result of COVID. And it's been really challenging. And the parents really spoke from the heart about what that means for them and what they've seen from a parent point of view, what it's done to their kids. And I think that we feel it. We've felt the challenges of COVID and how hard it's been. And we've all acknowledged that there's going to be ripple effects, and there are effects that we have yet to even see in many ways. And I think that's why the mental health aspect is so important to us as well this year. As we face this challenge, and I'm really hoping that we don't get this mandate from the county. I really am hoping that this is not going to happen, because I really don't want this district to have to go back to masking. So I would say to everybody, as we go through this challenge together, I mean, really our goal this year is to really make this the best year ever. And we really want to have a positive attitude, and it's really about bringing the community together. And we are going to face a challenge. If we are facing that challenge, my plea to everybody is to be respectful, to listen to each other, to treat each other, as somebody that you truly understand that we all have the same goal in mind, and that our community is bigger and better than these individual the contention that we get into. And I think that we can get through this together, and that we'll solve whatever comes our way. But I really, really implore everybody to treat each other with kindness and respect as we move forward at every level. So thank you. And I think that ends our meeting. So thank you all for staying so late. It is 8:33, and I am going to call this meeting adjourned. Thank you. Okay.
Good night, Alex.